The funeral for my old man just wrapped up, and I'm officially flat broke. Fine, I'll take it. Me, Linwei Luca, the newly appointed baron, and a downright pauper. Territory? Nothing but a pile of trouble. No food, no money, and more bandits than soldiers at my command. Damn it, how am I supposed to survive this mess? Just as I was stewing in frustration, a faint whiff of something sweet drifted over. Young master, tea is served. It was Yahello, my personal maid. We've grown up together since we were kids. That face, that perfect figure. Man, is she blooming. I subconsciously glanced at her, and like clockwork, a panel invisible to everyone but me popped up in front of my eyes. Yahello. Martial skill, 10. Strategy, 73. Loyalty, 100. A full 100 loyalty. Solid. This girl is someone I can trust. I picked up my teacup, my mind churning quickly. Yahello, tell me, do you think we should find someone to help us? She froze for a moment, concern quickly spreading across her delicate face. Young master, do you mean Baron Phaedra? Yep, my cheap father-in-law. When my dad was alive, he'd grin ear to ear every time he saw me, calling me dear nephew, as if I were his own flesh and blood. Now though, my dad's grave hasn't even sprouted grass yet, and I'm not so sure how much of that affection remains. Still, self-reliance beats begging for charity. I stood up abruptly and dove into the dust-covered storage room. Clang. I unsheathed a sword so rusted it might as well have been scrap metal. Tossed it aside. Then, out of sheer desperation, I grabbed a box, blew the dust off it, and my eyes lit up instantly. A golden eagle insignia, the gladiator's crest. My grandfather Edward, once a sword saint of the empire, had earned this thing with blood, sweat, and tears. Sword saints might not be in vogue anymore, but this insignia? It had put the king in my debt. A debt big enough to change everything. Steward, prepare the carriage. Now, to the capital. I barked towards the door. To get to the capital, we first had to pass through Phaedra's domain. I couldn't give up yet. Who knows? Maybe he'd honor old ties, and I wouldn't need to part with my grandfather's legacy after all. The carriage arrived at Phaedra's castle, and I sent my coachman, Asu, to announce my visit. And what happened? Asu returned with soot smudged all over his face, stumbling over his words. And my lord, they said I was a fraud and chased me out. Yahello exploded on the spot. How dare they? Asu, you've served the master for years. What? Their steward's blind or something. My heart sank like a rock. It all clicked instantly. Blind my ass. This had Phaedra's fingerprints all over it. I leaned back against the carriage wall as anger boiled inside me. Damn it. Kicking someone while they're down, this fast? Not even trying to hide it? What a piece of work. I was about to let loose with some colorful words when I noticed Yahello, fuming harder than I was. Her indignation cooled my anger. Asu, I ordered with icy calm, turn us around. To the capital. I'll never step foot in this stinking place again. The rest of the ride passed in silence. When the carriage rolled onto the wide stone streets of the capital, that suffocating frustration finally began to ease up a bit. In a side wing of the royal palace, the desk clerk barely lifted his eyelids as he eyed my threadbare baronial outfit. His condescension was so blatant he might as well have had rural bumpkin tattooed on his forehead. Name? Linwei Luca. What's your business? To see the king. Reason? He snorted, like I'd just told a joke. I wasn't in the mood to waste breath. Smack. I slammed the golden eagle insignia onto the table in front of him. The clerk's jaw practically hit the floor. His sneer evaporated into a groveling grin, and his voice quivered like a leaf. G. Gladiator's crest? Esteemed Baron. Right away. I'll inform His Majesty immediately. With that, he scurried off like a scared rabbit, leaving me to scoff. A bunch of bootlicking chumps, sniffing out power wherever they can. Before long, I was standing face to face with the king. His name was Zerlik XIII. Sitting on the royal throne with his golden hair and piercing blue eyes, he radiated authority, but there was a canny, merchant-like sharpness in his gaze. Baron Luca, he cut straight to the point. You've brought the gladiator's crest to me. What's your request? Dropping to one knee, I paid him the full respect his status demanded, but the words I spoke were anything but deferential. Your Majesty, I need money. And men. I raised my head, locking eyes with him. I hope to trade this crest for someone who can help me, and a sum of gold. Zerlik XIII blinked, clearly taken aback by my bold and unorthodox proposal. Then he smiled, like he was amused. Fair enough. he said with an approving nod. Within the ranks of the Royal Reserve Knights, you may choose anyone, and I'll add 1,000 gold coins. Reclaim this emblem. 1,000 gold coins. Deal. At last, the weight in my heart was lifted. With this money, my territory could finally be saved. As soon as the king's order was issued, I was immediately taken to the Knights' training ground. Honestly, this place called the Knights' Order felt less like a knightly haven and more like a playground for second-born nobles seeking glory. The eldest sons inherit the family legacy, while the rest either fight for their reputation or resign themselves to a civilian life. I cast my gaze around the training ground. Each of them had an air of arrogance, their eyes oozing disdain as they caught sight of my baron's insignia. In their looks, I could see nothing but contempt, as if following someone like me was the ultimate disgrace. Damn it. Sure, I'm broke right now, but I'm still above getting sneers from these spoiled brats. I ignored them and activated my cheat. Lambert. Martial skill, 74. Strategy, 40. Loyalty, 0. Evaluation, A-. Arc. Martial skill, 68. Strategy, 56. Loyalty, 0. Evaluation, B+. A lineup of stats scrolled before my eyes. Each of them was undoubtedly elite. While I leisurely strolled through the field, my gaze drifted over their faces. Those who met my eyes either chose to look away or glared back with even more hostility. Finally, I stopped in a corner. There he stood, silent and still, his gaze that of a lone wolf, calm but fierce. Norrell. Martial skill, 96. Strategy, 80. Evaluation, A+. Loyalty, 0. Special abilities. Horse training, hawk vision, weapon mastery, warrior. Holy crap, a diamond in the rough. These stats were head and shoulders above the rest. I declared, pointing at Norrell. I didn't raise my voice, but everyone in the training field heard it crystal clear. The Knight Commander walked over and patted Norrell on the shoulder. Norrell, you've graduated as of today. You'll serve under Baron Linway. Norrell's expression remained unchanged. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, placed a fist to his chest, and saluted me. Yes, my lord. This guy, his eyes held something, resistance. I liked it. Inside the carriage on our return trip, Norrell sat silently, as still as a statue. I could tell what he was thinking. To him, following a broke baron like me probably seemed like a dead end. But he didn't know. Being with me was the opportunity of a lifetime. In one corner of the carriage was a hefty bag of gold coins. Iluru poked at it curiously. Young master, now that we have money, shouldn't we buy some good weapons? She asked, her big, bright eyes blinking at me. That had been my plan, to distribute military pay, stabilize morale, and use the remaining funds to buy equipment. But Ilura's question gave me a brilliant idea. Why don't we hire some blacksmiths instead? If we had our own smiths, we'd save a fortune. I slapped my thigh in realization. She was absolutely right. A single cheap iron sword cost a gold coin. Equipping one soldier would take 10. With the money I had, I'd barely be able to arm 100 men. And in a world full of monsters and magic, that wouldn't even make a dent. Hiring our own blacksmiths, that was the sustainable route. The only catch, talented blacksmiths were rarer than gold. By the time I returned to my territory, I hadn't even had a chance to settle in before word reached me. My sale of the gladiator emblem was already making waves. No doubt, that old fox, Baron Fedra, was grinning ear to ear by now. Back when he and my father acted like sworn brothers, he was only interested in our family's military merits and my grandfather's honors. With my father now gone and myself pawning off honor for cash, I must appear like a disgrace, devoid of value, in a businessman's eyes. Fine by me. A shallow connection like that, it's better to cut ties early. What the hell? These are my soldiers. Hiding in the shadows, I watched as Norrell handed out pay to the so-called elite guards. It took everything in me not to curse out loud. Sue. Martial skill, 20. Strategy, 18. Loyalty, 40. Hansen. Martial skill, 23. Strategy, 10. Loyalty, 45. A collection of weaklings with laughably low loyalty. If this crew ever saw battle, they'd be the first to bolt. I could tell from Norrell's expression, darkening into a thundercloud, that he was thinking the same. Clearly, he hadn't expected to end up babysitting a band of rejects. And their weapons? The chipped blades and ragged leather armor. It wasn't a military unit. It was a joke. After distributing the pay, Norrell came straight to me. My lord, He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. I cut him off. I know what you want to say. From this moment on, you have full authority over this group. I was stunned for a moment, not expecting myself to relinquish power so decisively. But the weapons. 1 month. I raised a single finger. In 1 month, I'll have brand new gear ready for you. What you need to do now is whip these weaklings into shape. Norrell stared at me, doubt written all over his face. Still, he accepted the order and left. I may have said it confidently, but internally, I was panicking. Where am I supposed to find a talented blacksmith? You don't look happy, young master. Yahello cautiously approached with a cup of red tea. I sighed and shared my troubles with her. Unexpectedly, her eyes lit up. Young master, I heard today that a group of slave traders has arrived in the territory. Maybe you'll find the talent you need there. Slave traders. I slapped the table. Of course, it's not exactly the most honorable option, but scouring through slaves for hidden talent is definitely the fastest and cheapest solution right now. Lulu, you're my lucky star. I couldn't help but ruffle her hair. Lead the way. Let's check it out. The slave trader was a wiry, middle-aged man with shifty eyes. As soon as he saw me, a flattering smile spread across his face. Ah, Baron, what can I do for you? His greedy gaze swept over Yahello behind me. I frowned, irritation bubbling up within me. Show me what you've got. My tone was cold. He must have sensed my displeasure because he immediately diverted his eyes and politely led me to a row of cages draped with black cloth. Baron, are you looking for combat types or companion types? Any particular race in mind? Just bring them all out and let me see. I had no patience for his chatter. He lifted one of the cloth covers, revealing a cage full of trembling, cat-eared girls. I scanned their stats. Most were mediocre. There was one named Ancuna with a fierce, beast-like glint in her eyes and decent attributes. But unfortunately, she wasn't what I was looking for. Just as I was about to leave disappointed, a curled-up figure in the farthest corner caught my eye. It was a girl, small and thin, with messy hair covering her face. On instinct, I used appraisal on her. The next moment, I froze. Name, Saluka. Combat, 5. Strategy, 99. Rating, A. Loyalty, 0. Special skills, Mana Affinity, Blessing of Wisdom, Knowledgeable Traveler. What the hell? A strategy stat of 99? Is she even human? My attention zeroed in on the cat-eared girl named Saluka, though I kept my expression composed. Feigning disinterest, I casually asked, how much for the cat-eared ones? The scrawny trader's face lit up with joy at the prospect of business. Baron, they're 10 gold coins each. If you buy more, I'll give you a 20% discount, or maybe a buy 3 get 1 free deal. Ecstatic internally but maintaining my indifferent facade, I thought to myself, 10 gold coins. They're all skin and bones, barely good enough to scam some perverted old men. That's daylight robbery. Forget it. Too expensive. I waved dismissively and turned to leave. Wait, don't go, Baron. The trader panicked, grabbing onto me. Buy 1 get 1 free. Let's call it a friendly first deal. Fine. I finally, reluctantly, agreed, pointing at the lively-looking Ancuna and the barely breathing Saluka in the corner. The trader's face broke into a wide grin, probably thinking I'd lost my mind for choosing someone on death's door. What he didn't know was that I'd just scored a jackpot. 20 gold coins later, I'd acquired Ancuna and Saluka. Baron, need anything else? The trader, now emboldened, became more enthusiastic. I've got dwarves too. Interested in taking a look? My eyes lit up at the mention. Dwarves? Natural-born blacksmiths. He pulled back the cover of another cage, the stench immediately assaulting my nose. Inside were about a dozen listless dwarves. I activated scan right away. Sure enough, most carried the blacksmith talent. Eventually, my gaze settled on the frieliest-looking dwarf in the bunch. Name, Beaglin. Combat, 30. Strategy, 50. Rating, A. Loyalty, 0. Special skills, Heir of the Forge of Valor, Artisan's Heart, Blacksmith. Another A rank. His attributes weren't great, but just the skill, Heir of the Forge of Valor, sounded ridiculously impressive. Him, I declared without hesitation, not even asking the price. The trader, ever quick to seize an opportunity, gave me a friendly price, 10 gold coins. Deal. After paying, I tossed the trader an extra gold coin as a tip, leaving my name as Linway Luika. I told him to keep an eye out for any other exceptional talents in the future. The trader, alone, grinned widely. It was likely he thought he'd made a killing today. Little did he know, the real winner here was me. Laughing so hard his mouth couldn't close, he thumped his chest and promised to serve me to his utmost. On the way back, I had Ashu use the carriage to haul the newly purchased slaves while Aluru and I walked behind. As I looked at the barren lands of my territory, I found myself seriously pondering, how could I possibly bring prosperity to such a place? The answer was clear, I couldn't. I mean, I'm not some genius engineer. Other than being able to see through people's talents, I'm just your average weakling with no skills for building or fixing stuff. Master, you're starting to look more and more like a proper baron, Iluru suddenly said. Huh, you spend little to gain much and made connections with a well-traveled merchant. Lord Ryan would have deemed it far beneath him to socialize with a merchant like that. All I could do was reply half-heartedly. Yep, you're right. Iluru, have you ever thought about becoming an administrative officer? I decided to ask her. With her 73 points in strategy, it felt like a waste for her to remain a maid. But to my surprise, her eyes instantly turned red with emotion. Master, did I do something wrong? I don't want to be an official. I just want to stay by your side. All right then, forget I asked. A few days later, I gathered the 3 new slaves, along with Noral and Iluru, for a team bonding dinner. One table for me, another for Noral and Iluru, and yet another for the 3 slaves. Fried rapeseed greens, white bread, and potato soup. Out there, this meal wouldn't even qualify as decent, but here in Luika's territory, this was top-tier cuisine. The 3 slaves, Ankiuna, Saluka, and Bai Green, looked at the food in front of them with dead eyes and frozen expressions. They didn't dare move. They probably thought this was their last supper. I couldn't be bothered to explain. I just started eating. Bai Green, the dwarf, reacted first. Figuring he was going to die anyway, he decided he might as well be a stuffed corpse. He devoured his food in moments, and then stared longingly at the others' portions. Seeing this, Ankiuna snapped out of her stupor, hurriedly wolfing down her food as well. Saluka, however, was hesitant. She nibbled at her bread, one cautious bite at a time. Satisfied, I nodded and ordered the cook to serve Bai Green another helping. After dinner, I threw myself into managing the territory's affairs. To give Bai Green a proper forge, I spent the last of my gold coins, buying up all the iron ore from the locals and procuring an array of tools. 1,000 gold coins, gone in the blink of an eye. Damn, you never realize how expensive it is to run a household until you're in charge. I absolutely need to figure out a way to make more money. That night, Saluka and Ankiuna lay on their warm, comfortable beds, unable to sleep. Saluka, Ankiuna spoke up suddenly, breaking the silence. Back in the village, I couldn't stand you. You were beautiful, quiet, and all the boys adored you. Unlike me, I was just a wild tomboy. When we got captured, part of me was almost smug, thinking, now we're finally the same. I hated humans. They killed my parents, destroyed my home. But now, another human has given me this life. The irony isn't lost on me. Ankiuna's voice grew softer with each word. What's his play? Treat us like pampered pets just to shatter us later? But haven't we already been to hell and back? Saluka didn't respond. She simply hugged the blanket tighter, curling up in the corner of her bed. What Ankiuna didn't notice was the flicker of a memory crossing Saluka's mind, being so close to death that it would have been too late, were it not for Lin Wei spending nearly 8 pieces of gold to have a priest save her. Ankiuna, consumed by her own envy, had chosen to keep this a secret. But in Saluka's mind, Lin Wei's face, soft and unthreatening, lingered for a moment. Maybe, just maybe, this gentle-looking human boy was different after all. At the smithy, I looked straight at the stout, sharp-eyed dwarf in front of me. Bai Green. Yes, master. Bai Green immediately stood at attention, his gaze filled with respect. A week of decent food and treatment had made him fully understand. I was not like those nobles who treated him like cattle. What do you think of the forge? I gestured toward the shiny new tools around us. It's wonderful, master. I sighed, shedding a look of solemn sorrow. But you know, this territory is as poor as it gets. If I go bankrupt, there'll be no more white bread or fruit wine for you. Bai Green's face instantly dropped. After being spoiled by the good food and drink, the mere thought of going back to the old days tortured him. Master, I want to work hard for you, he quickly declared. Then, after a pause, he lowered his voice uncertainly. But the weapons I make might have some minor imperfections. Imperfections? Well, they're, generally unusable by the average person. I didn't quite get what he meant. He didn't explain further either. Instead, he grabbed a hammer and began crafting something on the spot. I took this chance to glance at his stats. Loyalty, 70. Not bad. He was trustworthy now. Clang, clang, clang. After a flurry of hard work, a ridiculously heavy iron sword lay before me. "Master, it's done," said By Green, wiping the sweat off his brow. I walked up, reaching out to grab the sword, and, I'll be damned, I couldn't lift it. Only then did I understand what he meant by the flaw. This thing, you couldn't even swing it without serious strength. Lucky for me, that's not an issue. I had Irelu fetch Norrell. The moment Norrell got his hands on the sword, he lifted it effortlessly, as if it was a toy. His face lit up with pure joy. "What a sword!" he exclaimed, clearly smitten. "Master, can I use this?" "Of course." I waved my hand generously. Norrell loyalty plus 10, current 80. Outstanding result. By Green, I turned to the dwarf. "Follow this standard going forward. One sword, and you'll be paid 1 silver coin for your work." By Green froze on the spot, stunned. 1 silver per sword? He could forge 20 swords a day. That's 2 gold coins. A slave, actually earning money? Praise you, great master. Overcome with emotion, he nearly dropped to his knees. By Green loyalty plus 20, current 90. Handled. A week later, By Green handed me 200 shiny, hefty longswords. Naturally, I didn't shortchange him on the promised payment. I brought Norrell along to the training grounds to outfit the new recruits. What surprised me was how in just 1 short week, those rookies had completely transformed. Sue, courage, 35. Loyalty, 50. Hansen, courage, 38. Loyalty, 55. Every recruit's courage stat had surpassed 30, and their loyalty had grown across the board. They stood tall, disciplined, with a fierce glint in their eyes. "Norrell, you really are something else." With these new weapons and Norrell's training, dealing with your run-of-the-mill bandits wouldn't be an issue. I equipped my guard unit with 100 swords. That left me with 100 more. Time to turn those blades into gold coins. Forget that old fox Fedra from the neighboring territory. I hauled the weapons directly to the capital, aiming to strike a deal with the Far East Trade Guild, the largest arms dealer in Norrance. The guild master was a mild-looking middle-aged man. Though he casually hefted one of the heavy long swords with a single hand, his expression unchanging. "Decent craftsmanship," he said, "but they're not enchanted weapons. 30 gold coins apiece. I've got 100 of them." I coolly crossed my legs. His eyes lit up. 100? Make it 40 gold coins apiece. Deal. For 1,000 gold coins. After subtracting costs, I cleared over 3,000 in profit. From flat broke to rolling in gold in under a month. Man, what a rush. Picture this, for 1,000 heavy gold coins packed into 4 large chests. The weight in my possession felt so tangible it was almost intoxicating. Casually, I tossed a few silver coins to 2 soldiers and my coachman and told them to help out some homeless widows in the capital. The soldiers' eyes gleamed as they eagerly ran off. Only my old coachman, Ashu, shook his head and insisted on staying by my side. I didn't argue, instead roping him into hauling these literal treasure chests. First stop, the armor shop. I dropped 1,000 gold, walking out with 100 gleaming sets of chainmail and dozens of kite shields. My heart raced looking at all that gear. Damn, if only I had a cavalry unit. Something twitched elsewhere for a moment at the thought, but after checking horse prices, my dreams were quickly squashed. A decent warhorse cost 300 gold each. I'd barely afford to set up a single cavalry squad. There goes the cavalry dream for now. Before heading back, I wandered through the market, picking up a gift, a pink ribbon, for Irelu. I made sure not to leave Antuna and Salukar out, grabbing something small for each of them. Can't play favorites when it's all about earning their trust. Passing a magical bookstore, curiosity got the best of me, and I dipped inside. Wizardry. Now that's a word that screams prestige and price. And, damn, was it pricey. One introduction to magic tome set me back 130 gold. Another, applications of magical attributes, cost a whopping 300 gold. And of course, a wizard's scandalous romances added another 100 gold to the tab. My wallet hurt, but I gritted my teeth and paid for it. The first 2 books were an investment in Salukar. Her magic affinity talent would be wasted if she didn't pursue the path of a mage. As for the last book, well, Even lords need to self-improve and broaden their horizons, don't they? Returning to the estate, Iralu swept into my arms like a chirping little bird, snuggling against my chest. You're finally back, master. Iralu missed you so much. I playfully tapped her nose and pulled out the pink ribbon like a magician. Her face immediately lit up, cradling it in her hands like it was a treasure. Antuna and Saluka stood nearby in their new maiden training uniforms, looking shy yet presentable. I didn't miss their envious glances. A knack for learning magic. I quickly corrected myself, trying to maintain composure. Silruka hesitated, clutching the new book tightly in her hands, her cheeks still faintly pink. Her tail flicked nervously behind her. Magic? Me? You think I can do it, master? I smiled warmly, leaning back in my chair. Of course. I wouldn't offer if I didn't see potential in you. Besides, I added with a smirk, it might be fun to surprise those who underestimate you. Her ears twitched, and for the first time, I saw a small, determined smile grace her lips. I'll do my best. Good. I'd planted another seed. Time, patience, and maybe a little guidance would turn her into a valuable ally. And well, I wasn't going to complain about having a magical expert among my ranks. The following weeks were productive, to say the least. With the successful clearing of the blood-boar bandits, both the resources and morale of my territory began to rise steadily. The townsfolk started to look at me, no, at us, with genuine respect rather than wary skepticism. Anjuna had taken up her role with the horses remarkably well. Much to everyone's surprise, those unruly steeds now trotted about as docile as lambs under her care. I'd occasionally catch glimpses of her chatting to them, her natural intuition forming bonds with the animals in ways mere training never could. Silruka, on the other hand, was diving headfirst into her studies of beginner magic. While her progress was modest so far, she'd managed to make sparks fly from her fingertips without setting anything important on fire. Her enthusiasm more than made up for it. Every success lit up her face, and, although she tried to hide it, I could tell she was proud to finally have something she could call her own. One evening, as I sat amidst the growing stack of plans, ledgers, and maps in my study, I found myself pausing for a moment of reflection. This wasn't where I imagined I'd end up when I first inherited the title of Lord. Frankly, I wasn't sure I even wanted it at the time. But as I watched the pieces of my domain slowly fall into place, loyal people like Anjuna, Silruka, and my overenthusiastic knight Norel among them, I began to feel a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The world was vast, full of challenges and opportunities. Mistakes would surely be made, and enemies would inevitably rise. But for the first time, I felt ready to face it all. Because this was no longer just my story. It was ours. The gift of magic. I forcibly redirected the conversation, speaking with genuine sincerity. I'd like you to become the guardian of Luika territory. But, even if you can't manage it, that's okay. I looked at her, speaking each word with deliberate clarity. Luika territory will always be your home. With my encouragement and unlimited resources, Saluka threw herself headfirst into the world of magic, even giving up her duties as a maid. On the other side of things, my dwarf cash machine, Biglin, was working overtime after I threw another 2,000 gold's worth of iron ore into his forge. Fearing he might work himself to death, I even hired him 2 apprentices to lighten the load. A month later, 500 brand new Norlar Joy swords were freshly forged. 500 swords. At the previous price, that equated to 25,000 gold coins. For reference, my rundown little territory only collected about 10 gold coins a month in taxes. Those 25k? That was over 2 centuries of tax revenue for me, earned in one go. I looked at that pile of swords, and what flickered in my eyes wasn't their steel gleam. It was the golden shine of cold, hard cash. Baron Linway, we meet again. The president of the Far East Trading Guild, Wes, smiled so widely it looked like his face might crack. Your last shipment? Sold like crazy. He poured me a drink with a flourish. The noble circles are clamoring for more. I flipped them for 70 gold coins apiece. I chuckled inwardly. Damn greedy merchant. Is that so? I said nonchalantly, swirling the wine in my hand. Well, I've got another 500 swords here. Think you can handle that kind of inventory? Wes's eyes bulged to the size of saucers, his breath catching. Handle it. I'll take however many you've got. The deal went through without a hitch. 20,000 gold coins straight to my pocket. This time, Wes, the old fox, even went all out to ensure our long-term partnership. He gifted me a purebred North Continent warhorse worth its weight in gold, a set of exquisite full-body plate armor, and a gem-encrusted noble longsword. This little gift bundle, easily worth 5,000 gold coins. The cunning bastard really knew how to play the game. After a few drinks, Wes finally started showing his hand. Lowering his voice and leaning closer, he spoke in a conspiratorial whisper. Baron Linway, in 2 months, the third autumn campaign will kick off. Would you be interested in joining Earl Aegean's forces? I could arrange for you to take a captain's position. The autumn campaign, let's call it what it is, was little more than an officially sanctioned shopping spree at the neighboring kingdom's borderlands. Earl Aegean, he's the son-in-law of Simon the Duke, a major left-wing political player. Clearly, they wanted to draw me into their circle. A captain's position? What an insult. Might as well toss me out like cannon fodder. But turning him down outright might sour relations with this golden goose of mine. My mind worked quickly. I put on a faux tipsy grin, let my tongue loll a bit, and slurred. Wah? Did you say an elf girl around here? To know why I haven't seen her. Wes's smile froze for a split second before he loudly clapped his thigh and burst into over-the-top laughter. Ha ha. Baron Linway, you're drunk. No such amenities here, I'm afraid. He gave me one of those knowing winks. But if you're really interested, I'll keep an eye out for some elven slaves for you. Subtle conversations between sharp minds. The true meaning was always between the lines. He knew I wasn't looking to take sides, and I knew he'd given up on recruiting me. We clinked glasses, leaving the conversation at that. What had been the more intimate Baron Linway reverted to the more distant Baron of Luika. When I stumbled out later, Wes no longer looked remotely tipsy. His gaze was piercing, cold as ice. Back at my estate, I promptly threw up. Thank God Aluru had gone to bed already, or I'd have to deal with her heart-wrenching looks of concern. The next morning, Saluka came to find me. Master, I've already finished both of those books. I nearly spat my tea out. You finished them in a week? Frantically, I summoned her stats panel. Saluka, martial skill, 5. Strategy, 108. Rating, A+. Loyalty, 87. Special talents, magic affinity, blessing of wisdom, well-read, novice mage. Damn, her strategy stat broke 100? What a genius. But geniuses require capital. I checked further. To upgrade her to an intermediate mage, 5,000 gold coins. Advanced mage, 20,000. The windfall I just made started tasting a whole lot less sweet. Damn it. No matter how tight the budget, you can't skimp on the kids. And you can't shortchange education. Clenching my teeth, I laid it all out. Saluka, in a few days, you're heading to the Royal Academy of Magic for advanced training. I'm giving you an honorary knight title to make things easier among the nobles over there. Don't worry about the tuition. I'll cover everything. The fake knight title would smooth over so many issues for her in that snobbish, aristocrat-filled place. Saluka froze, her tail twitching anxiously, and before I knew it, tears welled in her eyes. She wasn't a slave anymore. She was actually being made a knight, and her master would spend a fortune ensuring she got an education. And master, plus 13 to Saluka's loyalty stat current, 100. Success. Before I could react, a warm, soft. Her petite body threw itself into my arms, holding me so tightly I nearly stopped breathing. Master, Saluka will never let you down. I patted her gently on the back, and only one thought ran through my mind. This investment is worth it. Late at night, there was a soft knock at my bedroom door. Master, are you still awake? It was Saluka. I opened the door to find her clutching a pillow, her eyes full of anticipation. I can't sleep. Can I sleep with you, master? My brain, a veteran of calculated deliberations, roared into overdrive, but reason firmly reminded me this young girl was merely feeling insecure before leaving her home. Come in. I generously made room by offering half the bed. Lying beside her, breathing in the faint milky fragrance emanating from her, my heart was as calm as still water. Yeah, right. But I held it together. In the darkness, I could feel her sneaking glances at me. After a long moment, she seemed convinced I was asleep and finally closed her eyes peacefully. To her, I was her savior, the light in her life. She doesn't know I'm just a shrewd investor. And she, an expensive yet promising living weapon I've invested in. Saluka was leaving. Ankiyuna, that unruly little wildcat, wouldn't admit it, but she was struggling to hold back her emotions. The two of them had grown up in the same village, sold off together, served as maids together. Now, Saluka was heading to the capital to pursue the glory of magic, while Enkiuna stayed behind to wrangle fiery horses in the stable. Saluka wanted to properly say goodbye, but Enkiuna remained silent. It wasn't until the carriage carrying Saluka disappeared beyond the horizon that Enkiuna shouted with all her strength, as if it took everything she had. "Safe travels. I'll be waiting for you to come back." I stood nearby, witnessing the whole scene unfold. According to my loyalty system, the bond between these two girls had exceeded petty jealousies. Not bad. I gave Saluka a reassuring look. Her bold move of sneaking into my room with a pillow last night had already been categorized under pre-departure separation anxiety syndrome and treated by my unparalleled self-control. Yahello, oblivious to all of this, held Saluka's hands and advised her like a caring older sister to take good care of herself. As I watched my most expensive living weapon set off on her journey of advancement, I was already calculating my next steps. Autumn winds blew, bringing with them an invitation to the Royal Kingdom's annual autumn campaign. A delightful surprise, really. Perhaps the insignia I sold last time had reminded His Majesty the King of my existence in some remote corner of the realm. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Military achievements were the only hard currency for climbing ranks. In this world, no title means no voice. My reserve of 25,000 gold coins would serve as the chips for this gamble. I divided them into 3 portions. The first 5,000 coins were allocated to Saluka as her research funding. The second portion, 10,000 coins, was wholly invested in iron ore. The mines in Luika County were my treasure trove, and Big Len was my mint. The influx of commerce had everyone in my territory buzzing with excitement, and the tax revenues soared before my very eyes. The third and final portion, another 10,000, was split in half. 5,000 went into infrastructure improvements, reinforcing city walls, digging wells, and paving roads to win the people's favor. The remaining 5,000 went toward military recruitment. 200 strong villagers were enlisted, expanding my personal guard to 300 men. Weapons. With Big Len, I could turn iron ore into swords. Training? Noril could mold farmers into soldiers. My army was taking shape at an astonishing pace. Master, the steward from the Federa territory is here with an invitation. The Baron would like you to join him for dinner. My old butler informed me from outside. Yahello was helping me dress in front of the mirror as my mind conjured up the image of the pesky old fox next door, the Baron of Federa, wearing that perpetually insincere smile of his. Back when I was struggling, he avoided me like the plague. Now, with my newfound success, he comes fawning over me. How? Endearingly predictable. Not interested, I replied icily, dismissing him with only 2 words. Ah, how the tables have turned. Once upon a time, he could hardly be bothered to give me the time of day. Today I'll make sure he doesn't even get the chance. The training ground was a hive of activity. Noril had divided the 300 soldiers into 2 groups. The 100 veterans, with most of their combat ratings above 40, were engaged in brutal live drills, swords clashing, sparks flying. Meanwhile, the 200 new recruits diligently practiced the fundamentals of swordsmanship. In a corner of the training grounds, Enkiuna was commanding 50 of the most elite troops, familiarizing them with their new partners. 50 majestic horses, seized from bandits of the northern continent, stood proudly under her care, their muscles taut and spirits high. Nearby were 50 massive wooden crates. Inside each crate was a suit of full-body horse armor, custom designed by me and forged in secret by Big Len. Each set of armor gleamed silver. Over 100 pounds. Heavy cavalry. This is my trump card, a game-changing, battlefield-dominating ace. In this year's autumn campaign, I plan to pack these horse armors into crates, hauled by draft horses, disguised as logistical supplies. Wealth must remain hidden. A trump card should only be revealed when the stakes are highest. A month later, I received a letter from the Royal Magic Academy. It was West Luca's academic report. In the letter, her mentor used every word of praise imaginable to describe West Luca's magical talent. In just 1 month, she had mastered all intermediate-level magic and was even on track to earn the title of the youngest high-ranking mage in history. This was within my expectations. The second half of the letter mentioned something else. Earl Fallers, a powerful noble in the capital and a key figure in Duke Simon's faction, had taken notice of Westluca's talent. He had personally extended her an offer to join him. His proposal was to double the benefits she received from the Luca domain, cover all her future tuition costs, and provide her with rare magical equipment and books. Anyone with even half a brain would know which option to choose. On one side, there's a mere baron ruling a backwater, nameless domain. On the other, a mighty earl from the political epicenter of the kingdom. The mentor subtly expressed her concerns at the end of the letter, stating this would be a significant test of loyalty for a young girl. I put the letter down, picked up my tea, and chuckled softly. A test? Earl Fowler's gauges loyalty with money and status. But I can directly see loyalty as a numerical value. How can he possibly compete with me? My 300-strong Luca Steel Guard is now ready. 1 month of intensive training had utterly transformed these former miners and hunters. Their valor stats are no lower than 40, while those 50 veteran soldiers under Norrell's command all surpassed 50, with their rankings skyrocketing from E+ to C tier. From the most elite of this group, I assembled my ace, the heavy cavalry unit. When these soldiers learned they would each be granted a warhorse, their expressions were akin to winning the lottery. In this world, a barony affording iron armor and long swords for its forces is already opulent, let alone fielding actual cavalry. Such a prospect would be deemed outlandish. Norrell, in particular, was ecstatic like a 400-pound child. He picked out the most magnificent stallion and even started sleeping in the stables next to it every night. The only one looking disheartened was Anicap. Her face was visibly glum as she stared at the half-empty stables. "Master, make sure they're careful during training," she implored, concerned. This little wildcat had grown attached to the horses. I watched her twitchy tail swinging back and forth in irritation, barely restraining the urge to pat it. This wasn't like Westluca, whose soft, tender nature might allow such indulgences. Anicap, if provoked, truly would bite. "Master, is there any news from Westluca?" she suddenly asked. I shook my head. Other than letters asking for tuition payments and commending her for her new intermediate mage certification, I hadn't received any personal correspondence. "You could write to her," I suggested with a smile after noticing the fleeting disappointment in her eyes. Anicap's face flushed red, and after mumbling a quick, "Thank you," she darted away. Seems this little wildcat gets shy too. How amusing. The Royal Capital, Magic Academy. Congratulations, Westluca. You've successfully cast an advanced level spell. Mentor Londine stared at the cat-eared girl before her. This prodigy who had only enrolled 3 months ago, and felt her worldview shattering. This wasn't just talent. This was monstrous. She immediately reported the matter to the Academy Dean. The Dean, Elia, a several centuries-old elf, ranked as the 13th most powerful Grand Mage on the continent, and the only honorary Duchess of the Norlands Kingdom. A living legend. When Westluca was brought before this otherworldly, white-haired beauty, she was so nervous she forgot how to breathe. "Very gifted," Elia said after sizing her up for a moment, issuing her assessment. Then, she dropped a bombshell. "Then I, Elia, would like to take you as my apprentice. Do you accept?" Westluca's brain short-circuited immediately. Legendary Grand Mage Elia takes on her first apprentice in 100 years. News of this event detonated within the noble circles of the royal capital like a magic-induced explosion. Elia's previous 2 apprentices? One became a human legend, renowned for slaying a dragon. The other? The current Elven Queen. Westluca's name spread like wildfire throughout Norlands, with countless olive branches being extended her way, filling her mailbox to the brim. She, however, remained expressionless as she unceremoniously dumped all those letters straight into the trash bin. She now had the strongest backing imaginable. Elia warned her, until she commanded power on par with her potential, she must never reveal that she hailed from the Luca barony. It was a matter of protecting me and my territory. The best form of protection. A tall tree in the forest catches the wind's attention. A small and insignificant barony raising a legendary disciple? That, in itself, was an original sin. On the other side, Count Feros, who had once tried to recruit Saluka, received a letter stamped with Alia's seal. The content of the message was simple: mind your own business. The text alone was enough to send Count Feros into a cold sweat. He immediately swore an oath against his damned curiosity and began spiraling into overanalysis. A knight from a backwater barony becomes Alia's disciple? Wait, could it be? Baron Luika is secretly Alia's illegitimate son. That chilling thought made Count Pharos resolve not only to keep his lips sealed about Luika's land, but to also figure out how to ingratiate himself with this mysterious territory. After all, who wants to offend a legendary archmage and her supposed illegitimate child? Saluka received a letter from Ancuna, and her joy bubbled over like that of a child. Just as she prepared to reply, her mentor, Alia, stopped her. Until you become a true mage, refrain from contacting him, Alia instructed. But I miss them so much. Saluka's eyes welled up, pleading with her mentor. Alia let out a soft sigh, gently patting her on the head. My child, you need to be strong enough to stand proud by his side. Simply being a high mage is not enough. You must become an archmage. Only when your personal strength strikes fear into all those who covet you will your presence bring him honor rather than disaster. Saluka nodded in understanding, or, more accurately, half understanding. When you achieve the rank of high mage, I'll give you a week off to visit home, Alia promised. Really, teacher? Saluka's eyes sparkled with excitement, reminiscent of an elated kitten. Prompted by her desire to reunite with her master as soon as possible, she swore to achieve the rank of high mage at lightning speed. The countdown ended. My 300 Luika iron guards were ready for battle. I've been feeding them meat, hammering motivational speeches into their heads with Blue Planet-style success rhetoric. Now, every single one of these wolves looks at me with a fiery determination that lights up their eyes. Norrell is as giddy as a kid with a brand new toy, spending most of his day caressing his warhorse. And then there's Ancuna, our feisty little wildcat. Watching the stables empty each day has her looking sour, her expression long enough to drag the ground. Master, she said, fidgeting as she approached me. Please make sure none of them hurt the horses. I nearly burst out laughing. Is she worried about the horses or the soldiers? Before I could respond, she added quietly, Have you heard any news from Saluka? I told her that our brilliant feline protege was now the direct apprentice of the head of the Royal Academy of Magic, the kingdom's golden treasure. Her mouth formed a perfect O, her face cycling between awe and melancholy. I knew what she wasn't saying. Saluka's silence was her legendary mentor's way of protecting me. After all, just how conspicuous is it for a no-name barony to churn out a prodigy who stuns an entire kingdom? Good thing I maxed out her loyalty long ago. Otherwise, someone would have stolen her right out from under my nose by now. The day of departure arrived in a flash. Uluru wept rivers of tears, clinging to me so tightly it was as if she thought I'd vanish. Master, you must come back safely, she begged. Of course, I reassured her, patting her shoulder. Leaning in close, I whispered, Don't jinx me with a flag, silly girl. I swung onto my horse as 300 fierce and heavily armed guards gathered behind me, alongside over 800 militiamen hauling supplies. The grand convoy set out toward Furnace Bridge Fort, marching boldly toward victory and my first battleground glory. Furnace Bridge Fort was a riot of noble banners, turning the place into a marketplace of claimants. I strode directly to the registration officer. Barony of Luika, 300 elite soldiers, 500 in supply corps. Elite? The clerk raised a skeptical eyebrow, his face screaming, Are you kidding me? However, when his gaze shifted behind me to meet the piercing stares of my polished, battle-ready soldiers, his jaw practically hit his desk. He gulped audibly, his hand trembling as he marked a thick circle around the word elite in the ledger. Compared to the flaunting and theatrical troops brought by other nobles, my unit stood out like a ravenous wolf suddenly crashing a husky-themed costume party. I spotted Baron Fedra almost immediately, his face ashen when he sized up my troops and contrasted them with his shoddy bunch of misfits. The look on his face made it clear he regretted every decision that had led to this moment. I'll bet he's chewing himself up inside. Back then, you acted indifferent and dismissive. Today, I'm making it impossible for you to reach me. That kind of blatant, face-slapping moment feels damn satisfying. Later that night, the flood of nobles trying to cozy up to me nearly wore out the threshold of my tent flap. Got crushed into pieces. All the ones who wanted to send gifts for my daughter, curry favor to my concubines, or even dig up dirt on me. Yeah, I laughed and cursed them all away. I'm here to fight a war, not to build some harem. The next morning, the autumn campaign officially began. The so-called autumn campaign is really just a polite way of calling a state-sanctioned looting spree. A bunch of legitimized thugs go around raiding their neighbors for free stuff. Watching dukes and kings let their armies swarm like locusts, stealing cattle, sheep, and women, it made my stomach churn. Norl, I called for my knight. Relay my order. Kill Rima troops only. Not one finger is to be laid on civilians. Norl looked confused as hell, but nodded as ordered. I know the soldiers won't be happy about it. They won't get women or extra spoils. But that's my line in the sand. I'm not here to be a scumbag. I'm here to win glory and secure my title. We dove straight into the forest. On the way, we cleared out several Rima outposts. The heads of blue-eyed soldiers we took became tokens of our accomplishments. Around noon, a scout came rushing back with news. Sir, there's a town up ahead. We pushed past the trees and, sure enough, there it was, a stone-walled town. But something was off. The walls were crumbling, the gate left wide open, and there wasn't even a proper guard detail. It was eerily quiet, like a ghost town. The air reeked of a trap, a damn obvious one at that. I squinted up at the lazy soldiers patrolling the walls and activated my little cheat ability. D1. Martial, 60. Strategy, 40. Rating, C+. Noah. Martial, 64. Strategy, 35. Rating, C+. I swear I sucked in a sharp, icy breath, my blood running cold. These stats, every single one of them marked elite knights. An elite unit like this, sitting behind defenses that looked like a joke? This wasn't a town. This was a slaughterhouse all dressed up, dangling a bright, cheerful welcome sign to lure idiots in. And speaking of idiots, there's this Baron Farrell, a sneaky little bastard who's been shadowing me the whole way. The guy's a slick merchant turned noble, too cunning for his own good. Knowing his ragtag bunch couldn't compete with big-shot nobles like me, he's been sticking to my coattails, hoping to scavenge whatever scraps he can. But guess what? He got lost. This forest? Way harder to navigate than he thought. By the time he stumbled upon an outpost I'd cleared, all he found was a heap of headless, stripped corpses. The guy was stunned. Are these guys so filthy rich they don't even bother looting leather armor? What tripped him up even more was the untouched village nearby. How the hell was it untouched after an outpost got wiped? The answer's simple. I only kill soldiers. I don't mess with civilians. By the time I arrived, those villagers were long gone, hiding in the woods. Poor Farrell. Dreamed of making some sweet war profits, only to get jack squat. Right about then, one of his scouts came racing back to report. Baron, we've spotted Baron Luiska. He's right up ahead, camping by a town. But they haven't attacked. Farrell lit up like a damn bulb and rushed toward my location. From a distance, he spotted my camp and the so-called lightly defended town. Open gates, lowered drawbridge, sleepy guards casually lounging on the walls. He all but saw piles of gold and Rima women tossing off their clothes, beckoning him closer. But then he stopped. That old fox, while terrible at warfare, isn't brainless. Why wasn't Lindvis taking the bait? When something looks too good to be true, it's probably a trap. So, he set up camp nearby, silently joining me in a whoever moves first loses standoff. 2 days passed, and I made up my mind to leave. There's no doubt in my mind this place is a trap. Only an idiot would charge in. Farrell's not biting, so there's no point sticking around. But just as we prepared to break camp, something stirred in the town. A scout came racing inside its gates, and moments later, the gates were flung open. One by one, squads of heavily armored cavalry poured out, dark and dense, like a moving steel forest. 3,000 heavy cavalry, and behind them, a sea of iron-clad infantry. Norl's face went ghost white, sweat dripping from his temple. Holy hell, if we had gone in, we wouldn't have left behind even a scrap of bone. Across the way, Farrell's jaw hit the floor. He recognized them instantly, the royal armies of Rima. Rima wasn't playing around. This was their royal core force. Why the hell were they here? What kind of plan were they brewing? I got my answer soon enough. That tidal wave of steel didn't even glance our way. It forged straight ahead, toward the heart of the forest. Toward our king, Zelik 13. We were doomed. This was a complete. There's a shocking plot against the king. Your Majesty is in grave danger. Nora was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. My heart also sank. The internal strife in Norans had escalated to the point of colluding with foreign forces to assassinate the king. These nobles are rotten to the core. But now wasn't the time to dwell on that. With Rama's main force gone, that city truly became a ghost town. Master, this is our opportunity. Nora's eye sparkled. That old fox Farrell must have thought the same. Whoever acts first can claim all the supplies and women left in the city. However, I shook my head. Nora, how far are we from Rama's George stronghold? Less than half a day's journey, master. Perfect. I grinned, a wild idea forming in my mind. Everyone, listen up. New target, George stronghold. Full speed advance. What? Nora's jaw almost hit the ground in shock. He thought I'd lost my mind, but he quickly understood my intention. That's right. The majority of Rama's forces were off attacking the king. Their stronghold, George Fortress, was undoubtedly an empty shell right now. It was a gamble. If we won, I'd gain unimaginable glory and merits. If we lost, all 300 of us, we'd vanish without a trace. You can't catch a tiger cub without venturing into the tiger's den. Abandon all supplies. Charge with me. At my command, 300 Iron Knights became an arrow, hurtling toward the heart of Rama's kingdom. Meanwhile, that idiot Farrell drove his forces straight into that ghost town, grinning ear to ear over scraps and leftovers. Fool. Back at the king's camp, chaos reigned. The right-wing nobles had betrayed him suddenly. The loyal royal guard was stabbed in the back by their peers. King Zelik XIII, once invincible, now stood with terror and disbelief written across his face. Your Majesty, retreat immediately. The captain of the royal cavalry shouted hoarsely, cutting a bloodied path for the king. In the distance, Rama's steel armies kicked up a storm of dust and smoke. This was a massacre, plain and simple. As for those traitorous right-wing nobles, even as they were being slaughtered, they couldn't figure out why the Rama forces turned on them when they were supposed to be allies. Idiots. Negotiating with tigers? What fool expects a happy ending? That desperate charge almost broke the legs of my Iron Knights. If we hadn't had a diet of good food and brutal training, any regular unit would have collapsed halfway through. Finally, the grand silhouette of George's stronghold rose on the horizon. But my heart sank. The fortress gates were wide open, yet the walls were packed with soldiers. I scanned them with my cheat ability, and damn, all of them were elite units from that trap city we assaulted earlier. I really messed up. I had abandoned all the spoils of war, even the heads we collected, for this gamble. Going back empty-handed would make me the laughingstock of this campaign. A frontal assault? Don't even think about it. Those rows of ballistae on the walls would shred us into mulch. Just as I was about to order a retreat, a small team of 5 emerged from the fortress. Leading them was a young man in golden armor, flanked by nobles radiating bootlicker energy. Narrowing my eyes, I activated my cheat ability. Ein Pedeth, Bravery, 30. Strategy, 60. Assessment, C. Holy crap, a prince. This was one of those miracle moments people dream of. My heart started pounding. Adrenaline coursed through me. Capture him. If I could capture him alive, forget a barony. I'd be guaranteed an earldom. I immediately signaled Nora, letting him know to prepare for a surprise attack. Take him alive, I whispered. This brat here? He's none other than Rama's prince. Nora's eyes widened like saucers, his breathing heavy with excitement. When he looked at me, his gaze screamed undying admiration. That group of geniuses walked straight into our ambush. Your Highness Ein, the forest here holds treasures. You'll not leave empty-handed, I promise. A chubby earl grinned obsequiously. A scrawny knight frowned and hesitated. Lord Vian, the battle rages nearby. Isn't coming out here a bit risky? And just like that, the tripwire snapped taut. Thud, the 5-man team tumbled from their mounts, falling headlong into the dirt. Before they could react, my soldiers pounced. Like wolves, they descended upon them, their blades slicing ruthlessly. The process was swift, clean, and ruthlessly efficient. Not a single scream escaped their throats. Prince Ein Pe, the chubby count, and the scrawny knight were both pinned to the ground, cold steel pressed against their necks. I walked over, my gaze sweeping across their status panels. Crown Prince, Count, nothing remarkable. But when my eyes flicked to the panel of that scrawny knight, I froze. Unveil. Bravery, 40. Intelligence, 80. Grade A. What the hell? A princess. A cross-dressing princess. Holy crap, did I just stir up the hornet's nest of the Rama royal family? 2 important catches in one go. Take them all. Now, retreat immediately. I barked decisively. My lord. Norrell made a throat-slitting gesture toward Einvale. This night, lying on the ground, Einveil's sapphire blue eyes glared at me with anger and humiliation, as if she wanted to flay me alive with just her gaze. I chuckled. What a rare catch. What a waste it would be to kill her. Don't kill her, I smirked. Tie this knight to my horse. Meanwhile, in both Norlands and Rima, chaos erupted. King Zelik 13, already seething from an autumn campaign he nearly lost his life over, returned home and immediately ordered the heads of every traitorous noble house to be hung from gallows in the city square. Rima's king Eincharlie wasn't faring much better. Having just celebrated an unprecedented military victory, he was interrupted by news that made him want to murder someone on the spot. His most beloved daughter, along with his useless son, had been kidnapped right under his nose. The Rima royal palace descended into absolute pandemonium. And the mastermind behind all this, me, Lin Wei, was leisurely escorting my captives back to my territory. On the way, I found myself intrigued by the cross-dressing Rima princess. I had to admit, she was stunningly beautiful. Soft ash-gray hair, sapphire blue eyes, and skin pale as snow. But now, those enchanting eyes were filled with nothing but hatred for me. What's this brave and dashing knight's name? I teased. Veil, she spat through her teeth. When I reached out a hand, she instinctively shrank away, her body reacting faster than her mind. Looks like the occasional accidental pat I gave her on the rear during our journey had left quite the impression. Relax, Einveil. The moment I called her full name, her eyes widened in shock, the last shred of hope vanishing from them. What do you want? Her voice was icy. I tilted her chin up gently, leaning close to her ear, and whispered so only the two of us could hear. I hear King Eincharlie has a truly brilliant daughter who became a mid-level mage at just 16. Oh, and don't bother struggling. The ropes binding you are specially designed to suppress magic. Forgot to tell you, without your wand, a mage is no different than any other helpless girl. Her body froze. Her tone finally softened. Release us. The Rima kingdom will owe you a debt. I smiled, a blindingly cheerful smile. And should I hand you over to the furious King Zelik, do you think I wouldn't get exactly what I want? Her face turned ghostly pale as I added. Einveil, you wouldn't want word of your capture to become public knowledge, would you? I had her cornered. King Eincharlie, that old fox, had indeed sent an envoy to Norlands, though they sought the wrong person. In the royal palace, King Zelik 13 lounged on his overly ornate throne, utterly perplexed as he listened to the Rima envoy rattle on. Treated with royal courtesy befitting our crown prince and princess. Willing to cede the Begla steppes in exchange for the safe return of our royals. Zelik blinked, thinking for a moment he might have misheard. Crown prince? Princess? They're here? Since when? But the old wolf hid his confusion well, feigning disinterest while cheering internally. Holy hell, this is a windfall. Clearing his throat, he put on his best, your offer's not good enough, face and made an outrageous demand. Not good enough. Everything outside Fort George belongs to us. The envoy looked like he was ready to keel over, but begrudgingly offered, I'll deliver your terms, before clumsily excusing himself. As the envoy retreated, Zelik remained seated in deep thought. Something about all of this reeked of mischief. Who the hell? What kind of lunatic had the audacity to breach the defenses of Fort George and manage to sweep up both the Rima prince and princess in one fell swoop? This is crazy. Before long, the news of Nolan's crushing defeat of Rima, capturing 2 royal family members alive, spread throughout the entire kingdom as if wings carried it. When Farrell, that old fox, heard the news, the wine glass in his hand fell out of sheer shock. His mind buzzed, and in that instant, he linked the sensational news to me. The very person who had suddenly vanished and abandoned the fat piece of meat that was all but in their mouth. Who else could it be but me? At that moment, he must have been regretting so deeply that his intestines turned green with remorse. He had missed out on a dragon-riding son-in-law who could have propelled his family to the pinnacle overnight. I strolled confidently into the royal city with the Ein's siblings in tow. When I stood in front of the registrar again, his jaw nearly hit the floor. Baron Linvey, you. I casually tossed him a gold coin, too disinterested to waste words. Inform the king that I've brought him a generous gift. When King Zelik 13 saw me, his expression was as if he were eyeing a monster. He scanned me from head to toe, as if trying to discover whether I had 3 heads and 6 arms. Even Duke Elira, the woman reputed to never involve herself in politics, scrutinized me with a keen and intrigued gaze. On one knee, I knelt before the king, with a disgruntled Rima prince and a Rima princess who looked like she wanted to devour me alive standing behind me. At that moment, I knew I had won my bet. What followed proceeded as expected. Rima grudgingly accepted the exorbitant terms King Ziluk demanded for the redemption of their prince and princess. A massive tract of fertile forest was effortlessly transferred to Nolan's territory, and I, as the mastermind behind it all, naturally reaped significant rewards. The king granted me the title of Viscount and a sprawling estate so large it bordered on ridiculous land that had once belonged to a purged noble supporting the conservative faction located near the Beastmen tribes to the south. Anyone with a clear mind could see this for what it was, the king dangling a carrot while simultaneously testing me. Handle it well, and I'd become the next earl. Fail, and those Beastmen, they'd rip me to shreds. Damn it, that old fox. His schemes are sharp as ever. When I bid farewell to the Ein siblings, the sky was clear, bright, and cloudless. Outside the drawbridge fortress, a 100-member heavy cavalry unit from Rima formed a densely packed line, their gazes filled with murderous intent as they looked at me. Ein Peter, however, was surprisingly straightforward. Before departing, he nodded at me and remarked, "I hope we meet again." It was his sister, Ein Vale, whose smoldering blue eyes could have set me on fire. "Luiska Linvi," she growled through gritted teeth. "I'll remember you. The next time I catch you on the battlefield, I'll be sure to return the favor." I smirked, thinking to myself about the way her figure. Well, it wasn't bad at all. Nonchalantly, I turned around and presented them my back. New challenges await ahead. 2 territories, one that's in desperate need of rebuilding, and another crawling with hostile beastmen. No money, no people, no resources. That old fox of a king drew me a grand pie, but didn't hand me even a penny for startup funds. Damn him. He really expects me to create a miracle from scratch. But you know what? I thrive on this kind of challenge. Norrell's right. The king wants to cultivate a new faction to counterbalance the conservative nobles. And me? Linvi? I'm the chess piece he's chosen. A chess piece? Huh. One day, I'll be the one moving the pieces on the board. I became a viscount. This news spread faster than I anticipated. Far away at the Royal Magic Academy, when Saluka heard the news, she was engrossed in a thick book on magic. At first, she was thrilled for me. Then, her delicate face fell. 2 territories. Lord Linvi is definitely going to be overwhelmed. For a moment, a thought even crossed her mind. Should I start learning administrative skills so I can help share his burdens in the future? But she quickly shook her head. No, I must become the strongest mage, capable of always standing by his side. However, for now, perhaps I can seek some help from my mentor. Her teacher was one of the most esteemed grand archmages on the continent. Be it money or manpower, surely she could provide assistance. Duchess Elira reclined on a sunlit lounge chair, her silver hair shimmering like liquid light as her eyes remained shut. She had anticipated long ago that her precious protege would come to her. "Teacher, here's some tea." "Linvi, you performed marvelously." Elira sipped her red tea. Even her address for him had shifted from young baron to merely calling him by his name. This young man possessed not just courage and capability, but also the undivided loyalty of her extraordinary protege. Given time, carving out his own kingdom? Not beyond the realm of possibility. Noting the expectation shimmering in Saluka's eyes, Elira smiled. "I'll send a few of my." The wild mage went to pledge his allegiance to him. "Consider it an early wedding gift from me to you." Saluka's face turned bright red in an instant. "Teacher, please don't make such remarks in front of Viscount Linway." Of course, I had no idea about all the drama happening back at the academy. All I knew was, I was on the brink of going mad from being broke. Sure, I'd made 30,000 gold coins from the weapon workshop in Green, but when you're running a recently established and still rebuilding earldom, that amount? Barely a drop in the bucket. I left the management of Luika to my old butler and Norrell and took literally all I had left, 100 heavy cavalry and 50 personal guards, on a procession to my new fiefdom. The place used to be called St. Martin. Now, it's called New Luika. The moment I stepped into the territory, my initial enthusiasm took a nosedive. All I could see were abandoned farmlands and overgrown, desolate mines. Still, when compared to the barren wasteland of my previous barony, this place was a paradise. Fertile soil was abundant, and self-sufficiency wouldn't be an issue. The townsfolk, upon seeing my heavily armored and intimidating troop, gazed up in awe and reverence. Bards had already turned my exploits into ballads performed in taverns far and wide. A lord who dared to charge deep into enemy lines with only 300 men, managing to capture a prince and princess alive? Yeah, not someone you'd consider a pushover. Inside the carriage, Eluru pressed her small face against the window, curiously taking in the sight of it all. This was the land belonging to Lord Linway. Watching me radiate confidence as I marched ahead, she was genuinely happy for me. And yet, a faint, bittersweet ache stirred within her. She knew she could never become the lady of this domain. The castle exceeded my expectations. It was both grander and more extravagant than I'd anticipated. "Welcome home, Lord Linway." Over 50 maids bowed in unison to greet me. The sight? Quite impressive. Impressive, sure. But I candy wasn't going to fill any stomachs. The urgent priority was clear: recruit troops and gather capable individuals. By instinct, I almost called for Norrell. Then I remembered, he's still back at Luika. Damn it, I don't even have a reliable subordinate to lean on. Looks like I'll have to try my luck at the slave market. As I stepped out of the manor gate, I almost ran directly into a man cloaked in black. He pulled back his hood to reveal his handsome, elf-blooded features. "Greetings, Viscount Linway. My name is Narencel. I'm a wandering mage, here to pledge my service." I activated the system. Narencel. Strategy, 103. Loyalty, 80. Evaluation, A+. Holy crap, an initial loyalty of 80. That beats even Saluka when she first joined. Has my personal charm reached godlike levels? Or what? Heck, doesn't matter. If the system approves, he's hired. "Welcome aboard, Mage Narencel," I said, opening my arms without hesitation, not even questioning him. Narencel looked utterly stunned. He had come prepared with countless arguments and was even ready for rejection. But that easy? Really? This new lord of his, he clearly didn't follow any script. Picking up an A+ grade talent for free put me in a great mood. I was practically whistling as I stepped into the slave market. "Viscount, what might you be looking for?" A pudgy handler greeted me, his face full of fluffing smiles. "Show me your human slaves." After browsing the selections, however, all I saw was an array of unimpressive nobodies, not a single one with any special skills. "Not quite what I had in mind," I said, shaking my head. The handler's eyes twinkled with a sly gleam, and he leaned in close with a conspiratorial whisper. "Viscount, I originally set aside a rare find here for auction. But since you're here, would you like a sneak peek? I promise you won't be disappointed." Curiosity piqued, I raised an eyebrow. "What's the rarity?" The man grinned, a smile men share when words aren't needed. "A succubus." I swear, when I followed the guy to take a look at the succubus, it was purely out of a scholarly curiosity about creatures from another world. Seriously. And yet, as I walked down the hallway and caught sight of the 5 beauties in the cage, my composure slipped for just half a second. Small demonic wings protruded from their backs, black tails with heart-shaped tips swayed lazily, and their faces, so flawless they didn't even seem real. A quick glance at their status panels revealed decent numbers, but nothing to write home about. Then, my eyes landed on the last cage. Inside lay an unconscious succubus, her snow-white hair cascading around her lithe figure. My pupils immediately contracted. Bitey whitey. Combat power, 23, abnormal. Strategy, 182, abnormal. Evaluation, S. Special abilities, Dragon Tamer, Dragon Slayer, Empress, Transmigrator. What the hell? Is the system glitched or something? An S-grade evaluation? Strategy at 182. Add to that 4 insanely OP abilities lighting up like a Christmas tree. The final trait, alone new. A time traveler. My heart pounded wildly in my chest as an absurd, yet deeply authentic feeling surged through me. "You're a fellow countryman?" Suppressing the storm brewing inside me, I acted nonchalantly, pointing to the unconscious succubus lying nearby. "This one, what's the price?" 10,000 gold coins, said the pudgy merchant, rubbing his hands together with a forced look of sincerity. "My lord, while she's certainly the most beautiful, she seems to have some issues. Faints a lot for no apparent reason. Honestly, I'd recommend someone else." "I'll take her." I cut him off decisively. "Are you kidding me? 10,000. I'd pay 100,000 without blinking." Walking out of the slave trading house, I felt somewhat at a loss. I'd originally hoped to find a few reliable tools. I mean, assistants, but aside from this mysterious fellow countryman, I came up empty-handed. It seems talent is something I'll have to cultivate myself. Without delay, I put up recruitment posters across the territory. The criteria were laughably simple. Enlistment earned 1 silver coin up front, along with guaranteed meals. At worst, hard biscuits and porridge. The announcement sent every able-bodied youth in the region into a frenzy. Are you kidding me? Signing up with a warlord who captured both the prince and princess in open battle, and getting to eat biscuits every day? This is basically paradise. By the end of the afternoon, I'd recruited a solid 1,000 men. And as luck would have it, I managed to dig up 2 hidden gems among them. They were brothers, hunters, Akshin and Ankro, born sharpshooters, with combat prowess and strategic thinking both rating above a solid 60. They even came with the rare eagle eye talent. I immediately promoted them to squad leaders on the spot. Everything was starting to fall into place. Everything. That is, except for the mysterious countrywoman I'd spent 10,000 gold coins on. She had been sleeping, completely comatose, for an entire week. Even the priest I brought in for a consult was stumped, mumbling prayers over her to no effect. Just as I was on the verge of giving up, she woke up. When Yahello brought a steaming bowl of soup into the room, Beatty was already sitting upright on the bed, silently surveying her surroundings. There was a certain aura about her, a natural, almost regal froideur, mixed with the sharp gaze of someone accustomed to being in control. Where is this place? Her voice was calm and icy, devoid of any warmth or curiosity. New Luika territory. Yahello placed the meal on the table, a deluxe dish, prepared exactly as I'd instructed, a hearty stew filled with real chunks of meat, accompanied by several pieces of soft, fluffy white bread. For just the briefest moment, surprise flickered in Beatty's eyes. She could tell. This was not a meal typical for a mere slave. She didn't ask any questions, though. She simply picked up the bread and began to eat in small, deliberate bites. I was busy on the training grounds, watching my band of greenhorn recruits clumsily swing wooden swords, when Yahello came running. "Young master, the succubus lady has woken up. Take good care of her," I replied with a nod. Truthfully, I was dying to interrogate this fellow countryman, but I had more pressing matters to deal with at the moment. The ever-cunning Earl Farwa had come to pay me a visit. In the reception hall, Earl Farwa greeted me with a warm, fatherly smile, seemingly unfazed by my less-than-cordial welcome. That old fox. No way he's here without an agenda. After a round of polite small talk, he cut straight to the chase. "Viscount Linway, I'd like to establish a trade alliance with your territory." I smirked inwardly. A trade deal? A minor arrangement like this warranted the personal attention of an earl? Farwa seemed to sense my skepticism. Still wearing his practiced smile, he casually delivered the first bombshell. "I should also mention, as a gesture of goodwill, I've brought along 300 northern thoroughbreds. Consider them a token of my respect." I almost shot out of my chair. 300 northern thoroughbreds. That's over 90,000 gold coins worth of horses. What on earth is this guy after? Does he think he's my long-lost father or something? This had trap written all over it. The kind of gilded, gold-plated honey trap you couldn't resist. Noticing my wary expression, Farwa finally stopped dancing around the point. He lowered his voice, as if making an offhand comment. "By the way, I must thank Lady Saluka for tutoring my daughter in magic. This small gift is but a token of my gratitude." Saluka. In that instant, everything clicked. Of course, I should have known. This sly old fox wasn't just here to butter me up. He'd come bearing offerings because of Saluka, and, more importantly, the grand archmage she represented. These nobles, not a single one of them can be underestimated. Lifting my teacup, I returned his smile with a warm one of my own. "My dear Earl, you're far too generous." And with that, I accepted his gift of 90,000 gold worth of thoroughbreds. After sending off the smiling Earl Farwa, I sat alone in my study, absent-mindedly running my fingers along the edge of my teacup. Just like that, 300 of the finest horses in the land had been delivered right to my doorstep. That sly fox. He claimed his generosity was out of gratitude to Saluka, but in truth, this was a calculated move to court favor with Duchess Elia and get in early with me, a rising star on the political stage. These aristocrats, nothing but scheming sharks in silk and lace. Playing with fire, aren't they? Today they can purge the right wing, and tomorrow, for some other reason, they themselves could be purged by the king. Choosing a side. Once you choose wrong, there's no coming back from it. But who spits out fat meat that's already in their mouth? With these 300 northern warhorses, my heavy cavalry regiment will finally have a foundation. Still, a proper count's territory ought to have at least 5,000 standing troops. My little over 1,000? Barely enough to fill a gap in the teeth. Troops, equipment, supplies, wages, it all boils down to one thing: money. And I, damn it, am flat broke. When I pushed open Whitey's door, she was sitting by the window engrossed in one of the books from my shelf, Lance of the Grey Forest. The afternoon sun painted golden highlights on her flaxen hair and revealed the fine fuzz on her cheeks. The small, black wings on her back quivered lightly, and the tip of her rounded black tail swayed lazily in midair, as though expressing a kind of serene ennui. The slave collar around her neck, at that moment, looked more like a distinctive accessory. I had no doubt that if she wanted to, she could snap it with a flick of her fingers. She had noticed me a long time ago but pretended not to see. Not until I stepped closer did she bother to acknowledge me. "Hello." She lifted her head, her tone cool and her eyes appraising. She didn't call me master, but I didn't care in the slightest. After all, the panel clearly says Empress. I'd be an absolute fool to act like some pompous lord in front of this S-rank powerhouse. "Good afternoon," I said with a light smile, pointing to the book in her hands. "I like that book a lot too. What do you think of it?" It appeared my calm demeanor caught her a bit off guard. "Quite interesting," she replied, returning the book to its shelf. She stretched in a way that was both elegant and languid, exuding a noble air utterly out of place with her slave status. Humans, though their lives are fleeting, somehow always manage to create work that can truly catch the eye. That tone, straight out of the mouth of some ancient being who's lived centuries. Which, come to think of it, she pretty much is. "It's good that you like it," I said briefly. "Make yourself at home here." Just a quick greeting to get acquainted. For a fellow traveler whose status panel spells out transmigrator, I know patience is key. After I left, I didn't catch the subtle smile that tugged at the corner of her lips, nor did I see the panel ticking her affection from 0 to 5. Winter's first snowfall arrived right on cue. Here in Nolens, the winters are long and brutally cold. With heavy snowfall cutting off roads, a season like this is a matter of life and death for ordinary farmers. I instructed the steward to post notices. During the winter, the manor would hire temporary laborers to sweep snow, tend horses, assist in the kitchens, and other odd jobs, for a daily wage of 3 copper coins, plus 3 square meals. Among fellow nobles, this would be seen as sheer lunacy. But with the 9 years of education I grew up with, there's no way I could stand by and watch my subjects starve to death. Besides, a reputation for kindness? Sometimes it's a sharper tool than swords. Wearing the heavy cloak Aluru had draped over me, I crunched through snow that squeaked beneath my boots. Beyond the gates of the estate, the distant sound of children laughing mingled with the aroma of cooking food that filled the air. This was the life I envisioned for my territory. Simple humanness in every corner. At the training grounds, the new recruits were roaring through their drills in the biting snow. Thanks to full meals and on-time pay, they carried themselves like they'd been fueled with adrenaline. I climbed up to the battlements, facing a howling wind. The veterans trained by Nolo were now the idols of every new recruit. The way they looked at me, fanatical, almost devout. After all, in that battle where we captured a royal family, my image became one of invincibility to them, a deity of war. Beyond the walls, the snow blanketed everything. Just past a small forest, a wide, swift river served as a natural boundary. And on the far bank lay the land of the orcs. It had been 10 years since those orcs, once a constant threat at the borders, had gone eerily still. In my gut, I couldn't shake a foreboding sense of unease. The calmer the waters, the deeper the storm that brews beneath. Meanwhile, at the Royal Capital School of Magic. Congratulations, Saluka. As of today, you are officially recognized as a high mage. Mentor Ranni's words were tinged with both admiration and awe. Enrolling in summer, conceiving spells by fall, and achieving high status by winter? This speed wasn't just brilliance, it was monstrous. "Thank you, Mentor Ranni." Saluka accepted the emblem, her expression brimming with undisguised delight. Becoming a high mage meant she finally gained the qualifications to briefly return to his side. Her teacher had already promised her a week's leave in spring. But just as she was about to retreat to her quarters and bury herself in spell books, a familiar, irksome voice cut through the air. "Miss Saluka, you are like a blooming rose in the garden. With just one glance, I am utterly captivated." A young man with golden hair, dressed in ornate royal attire, stood before her holding a bouquet of flowers, his expression besotted. Prince Michel. Ever since Saluka's extraordinary talent had shocked the entire academy, this young prince had stuck to her like glue, constantly showering her with public confessions of undying love, only to be met, time and time again, with her cold rejections. A look of unmasked disdain appeared on Saluka's face. "Prince Michel, I've told you countless times already. Right now, I only care about studying magic." Her heart, however, had long been claimed by another, a man who had been her light when she was at her lowest. "Oh, it's fine, Miss Saluka," Prince Michel said, undeterred by her chilly demeanor. His confidence, rooted in his title and persistence, assured him that he could eventually win the heart of this seemingly naive young woman. "I'll be back." He wasn't about to give up. In order to snatch the throne from his elder brother, Saluka, and more importantly, her connection to Duchess Elian, was a force he needed on his side. "Good day, Viscount Linvey." Freshly descending from the city wall, I came across the ever-bored Narencel. "Something on your mind?" I asked. "Not really," the A+ rank mage said with a shrug. "It's just, I'm bored. I get it. Given my fief barely has any decent magic resources, it's hard for him to keep himself occupied." "Narencel," I said, a sudden thought crossing my mind. "How about becoming my administrator? We'll negotiate the salary." He shook his head, casually dismissing my bold suggestion. "Not interested in bureaucracy. However, my lord, if you manage to find any talented children, I could train them as magic apprentices for you. Cultivate my own mages?" The idea struck me instantly. I was intrigued, but along with the inspiration came a headache. Training a magic apprentice from scratch to the point of being battle-ready costs an absolutely staggering amount of coin. The little money I'd scraped together selling weapons wouldn't even begin to cover it. I needed money, a lot of it. I had to find a new way to fund this venture. This winter was turning out to be harsher than I had anticipated. I thought that just finding odd jobs for the peasants would get them through the season. But nope, when I checked, my own castle's food supplies were running dangerously low. The days only kept getting colder, and the snow wouldn't melt for over a month. This was no good. My ever-loyal steward leaned close and suggested quietly, "My lord, perhaps it's best to let those peasants fend for themselves." He'd crunched the numbers and concluded that without those burdensome mouths to feed, the food in the warehouse would be more than enough for me, for decades, even. I didn't reply immediately. When the royal guard raided the St. Martin family's castle, they cleaned it out like locusts, taking everything that wasn't nailed down, and even some things that were. All that was left for me were some unsellable trinkets. I could have walked away, leaving the peasants to starve or freeze. But I had only just begun to cultivate my brave and benevolent image. Feeding them today only to abandon them tomorrow? Such inconsistency would ruin my reputation and make me a laughingstock. You either commit to something fully or don't start at all. Half measures are for fools. With my brows furrowed, I mulled the problem over. And then it hit me. Hunting. Yes, damn it, hunting. The snowy forest was teeming with hares, long-eared mice, and even deer. It was the perfect excuse to drag out my green-as-grass recruits and put them to work, instead of letting them rot in camp. 1,000 soldiers armed with longbows scouring the woods? That'd be nothing short of a massacre. I had a feeling that the local hunters, who rely on the forest for their livelihood, were in for a rough time. But compensating them? Not happening. Those hunters are already some of the wealthiest folks in the fief aside from me. Let them struggle a bit. It's only fair. This was just year one. We were unprepared. Next year, I wouldn't let it happen again. When the first warm breeze of spring finally arrived, I let out a long sigh of relief. We'd scoured that forest so thoroughly over the winter, there was hardly any game left alive. But at least I'd kept my promise to the people. One thing was clear, though. Come this year's harvest, I had to secure way more wheat. Stored food was the only true guarantee. The winter training hadn't been a waste either. Ukshin and Ankro, those two lads, were finally beginning to resemble proper knights, a far cry from the bumbling fools they'd been. My personal guard also became proficient in wielding the long swords forged by Green, while 300 of them now showed promise as cavalry. The only downside, not a single bandit in the area to test them on. I was itching to send them out to taste some real blood. Experience was the only thing separating my recruits from true soldiers. As I pondered how to better train them, it was a moment when an unexpected person returned. Saluka. She arrived at my castle in a humble, dusty carriage. The second she stepped in, she gave Ancuna a solid hug. The two little cat girls embraced each other tightly, their eyes rimmed with redness. I leaned against the doorframe, observing her. This girl, she'd changed. She still had that soft, sweet demeanor, but the faint glimmers of insecurity and timidity in her eyes were gone. They'd been replaced by, what's the word, confidence? Yeah, confidence. Where's Master? She tiptoed and looked around, just like a little kitten searching for its owner. Norrell, who happened to walk in from outside, grumbled back. The Lord is in New Ruka domain. Didn't you know? Saluka smacked her forehead, her face filled with sheer regret. Of course, I wasn't just that small-time baron anymore. She grabbed Ancuna's hand without hesitation, dragging her toward the door. Let's go find Master. That impetuous energy of hers, it half made me want to laugh. By the time the two of them made it to New Ruka, it was already the next day. I was in the courtyard, watching Action and the others train. I turned my head, and there she was, a delicate figure sprinting straight toward me. Master. The next second, a warm and soft body slammed into my arms. Saluka clung tightly to my arm, her fluffy tail wrapping instinctively around my calf, swishing back and forth. It tickled. Nearby, Elaru noticed Ancuna and happily scurried over. The two maids instantly dove into animated whispers, chattering away. Meanwhile, Whitey, the so-called Empress, who had been leeching off me and refusing to leave, watched Saluka with great interest. Her eyes gleamed with an air of surprise, and I understood where that surprise was coming from. Even I was thrown off guard. I glanced at Saluka's stat screen. Saluka, Valor, 10. Strategy, 168. Rating S. Affection level, 100. Special talents, Magic Affinity, Blessing of Wisdom, Encyclopedic Knowledge, Advanced Mage. What the hell? Strategy 168? S rating? Is this still the same little cat girl I once knew? Did attending that training program in the capital turn her into a super scion? And what's with the affection level replacing loyalty? Full score, 100 no less. What exactly did she learn during her time at the capital? Back when I sent her to study, paying her tuition fees, it was purely an investment. I just wanted her to stay loyal and work tirelessly for me. But now it seems like things have taken a slight detour. To be completely honest, I've never thought of myself as a good guy. When I bought her, my mind was full of ways to use her. If she hadn't had her talents, who knows what dark corner she would have ended up in right now. Master, and this is? Saluka's gaze landed on Whitey. Whitey, being as composed as ever, offered a reserved smile. My name is Whitey. The Honorable Viscount Lin Wei purchased me as a slave. A slave? I almost choked on my breath. Lady, with acting skills like yours, you're wasting your talent by not going for an award. Hearing the terms master and slave, Saluka's eyes noticeably lit up. Her expression toward Whitey softened, as if she'd just found a kindred spirit. I could practically feel Whitey's mind whirring with calculations. The way she looked at me, it was like she was staring at a puzzle box brimming with secrets. A viscount with an advanced mage under his command and an enigmatic former empress hidden away? Yeah, this script is starting to feel a bit out of bounds. I had already predicted Saluka would stir up trouble on the night of her return. What I didn't see coming was Elaru joining in on the chaos. In the middle of the night, the two young women stood at my door, each clutching a pillow. Their timid yet pitiful expressions hinted that if I dared say no, I'd be painted as an irredeemable villain. Young master. Master. I rubbed my temples, a headache swelling. Can't sleep? Saluka nodded vigorously. The wind's really strong outside. Saluka's scared. Oh, come on. A high-level mage capable of casting fireballs is scared of a bit of wind? You can't make up a better excuse than that. I turned to Elaru, wondering what kind of reasoning she'd come up with this time. I just wanted to relive what it was like sleeping beside young master. Like before, Elaru stammered, her face flushed red like a ripe apple. What else could I say at this point? These two were practically raised with me, and Elaru especially. Before she'd turned 10, we'd practically shared a bed every night. Now they're all grown, their figures more stunning than ever. And this? Fine, just this once. I sighed, resigned, as I opened the door. And before I even finished my sentence, the two girls darted in like startled rabbits. I cast a glance around the room, my expression cold as if I were dealing with a stranger who had mistakenly walked into the wrong house. "Oh, it's you," I said flatly, leaning back in my chair. No enthusiasm, no curiosity, just the indifference you'd reserve for an uneventful committee report. Yahello clenched the hem of her dress and whispered, "Sir, I'll head downstairs first." She curtsied to me, then quickly withdrew, leaving in such a rush that I even heard her stumble at the doorway. "So, what do you want, Lena?" I picked up the pen again, absently flipping a document page. I didn't even bother standing up. She straightened up, wearing the polite smile she was supposed to have, but the smile never reached her eyes. "I came to apologize for my past immaturity and mistakes," she said, her tone sweet as honey. But the sweeter it was, the more guarded I became. Behind this timely repentance, there was surely some kind of bargaining chip. "Oh, is that so?" I raised an eyebrow, pretending to be interested. "How considerate of you." The air fell into silence at once. She understood that I had no intention of forgiving her. "This isn't easy for me," she continued, taking a step forward. She tried hard to soften her gaze, but a trace of urgency still showed through. "Father regretted what happened back then, cutting ties with you, I mean. He hopes we can reconnect." "Reconnect? That's what they're calling it now?" I almost laughed, but instead my expression grew colder. "You mean he regrets making a bad political bet?" I snapped, shooting her a pointed look. "And now he's sending you back to make up for it. Is that it, Lena?" Her smile began to stiffen. "Lena," I said, my tone cutting like a blade. "Stop pretending this is about you or your regret. You and I both know why you're in my castle today. You were never sent here to apologize. You're a negotiation piece, nothing more." She caught her breath, her face going pale all at once, and said in a trembling yet stubborn voice, You don't have to be so cruel." "Cruel?" I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the stone floor. "Let me tell you what's cruel, Lena. Watching you turn your nose up at me all those years ago, treating me like nothing. And now," my voice dipped menacingly, "now, you come here acting as though none of that happened, expecting me to welcome you with open arms? That's what's cruel." I took a step toward her, and she instinctively took one back. "Let me be clear," I said, looking down at her. "I don't need your father's alliances or his regrets. Tell the Baron." I leaned in just enough for my shadow to fall over her, to keep his schemes far from my lands. "And as for you, Lena," I straightened up, my voice calm but final. "This is the last time you'll darken my doorway. Do I make myself clear?" She clenched the handkerchief in her hand and stayed silent for a long time. In the end, she only bit her lower lip tightly and turned to leave. The moment the door closed, Yahello peeked in from outside, a hint of hesitation in her voice. "Sir." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Yes, Yahello. Need me to prepare tea?" she asked timidly, her voice soft as ever. Despite everything, I couldn't help but let a small smile tug at my lips. "Tea sounds wonderful," I said, gesturing for her to come in. Battlefields, political schemes, noble entanglements, they could wait. For now, tea. Just tea. And the quiet solace of knowing my world, messy as it was, distinctly belonged to no one but me. God, colder than a stranger's glance. "What are you doing here?" Lena seemed caught off guard by my blunt question, freezing for a moment before forcing on a strained smile. "Can I come to visit my childhood friend? After all, technically you're still my fiancé, aren't you?" "Fiancé?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Say that again?" I leaned back into my chair, tapping my fingers on the table and gesturing slightly as if to invite a conversation. "Lena, let me make one thing very clear. Your dear father tore up our engagement papers like throwing out trash, and now you're here trying to bring it up again? If you were here as my childhood friend, we could exchange a few words, maybe. But if you mention fiancé one more time, I'll have you thrown out immediately." Her face turned deathly pale in an instant. I apologize for the greed of my father." "There's no need for you to apologize," I said, shaking my head. The smile on my face was dripping with sarcasm. "You were nothing more than a pawn in his political games. Weren't you the one who couldn't stand me back when I was just some poor baron's son?" I glanced behind her. Yahello was standing there, nervously wringing the corner of her dress. That moment, the anger from years ago came rushing back up in a fiery surge. I stood up, walked over to Yahello, and, right in front of Lena, took her hand in mine. Listen to me, Lena. Yahello is my family. Anyone who dares to lay a single finger on her becomes my mortal enemy. I haven't forgotten what you tried to do years ago. If you're here just to spout nonsense, then by all means, you should leave now. Lena trembled all over, her lips quivering, unable to say even a single word. Her eyes were fixed on me with a lingering stare. Head maid. I called out toward the door. Escort Miss Lena downstairs to rest. Make sure our guest is treated properly. Public opinion? Petty? I don't give a damn. Anyone foolish enough to harm so much as a single hair on Yahello's head will wish they'd never even been born. After Lena was taken away, the estate's courtyard stood neatly stacked with 10 large chests. It was money from Buy Green, payment delivered. I opened one of the chests, and the glimmer of gold was so intense it practically blinded me. A total of 100,000 gold coins. Standing in front of that mountain of gold, I felt none of the excitement I thought I might. Sure, it sounded like a lot, but once I start pouring it into expanding the army and outfitting heavy cavalry, it won't even make a ripple. It's not enough. Nowhere close to enough. I need more money, more troops, more power. Just then, a message came in from that fat slave merchant, saying a new batch of goods had arrived. Interesting. I didn't hesitate. Taking Yahello with me, we left the manor. When it comes to recruiting talent, I never miss an opportunity. By the time we reached the Merchants Guild, that fat man was practically salivating at the sight of me, waddling over as fast as his legs could manage. His face was plastered with an obsequious grin. My dear Viscount Linway, it's such an honor to see you. The way he looked at me wasn't the way you look at a noble. It was the way you look at a walking pile of gold. Ignoring his flattery, I headed straight for the backyard. In the courtyard, several large prison carts were parked, the covers already pulled back to reveal what was inside. Inside the carts was a group of beings I'd never seen before. Their bodies were covered in dark, grayish scales. Physically, they bore some resemblance to humans, but they had long, slender tails dragging behind them. Lizard folk. Goo. Martial skill, 89. Strategy, 10. Rating, special ability, scale armor hardening, minor magic immunity. Lin. Martial skill, 70. Strategy, 10. Rating, B+. Special ability, scale armor hardening. I glanced over their stats, and my eyes narrowed with interest. High martial skill, laced with magic resistance too? Viscount, the fat merchant said, noticing my fascination. He leaned in to explain. These lizard folk naturally possess resistance to magic. That's why they're restrained with magic-infused shackles, to keep things safe. I nodded slightly, already making calculations in my mind. 200 lizard folk like this. If I could bring them under my command, they'd be an incredibly formidable force. How much for the lizard folk? I didn't bother dancing around the topic. The merchant's eyes lit up, and he held up 3 fingers. Individually, 3,000 gold coins each, he said with a knowing smile. Then, as if reading my thoughts, he leaned closer. But if you buy them all in one go, 50,000 flat. What do you say? 50,000 gold. I didn't respond immediately, instead running the numbers in my mind. This fat merchant wasn't just looking to make a profit. He was betting on my rise to power, cultivating goodwill for the long run. Given my control over New Lucas trade taxes, he knew currying favor with me was a safe investment. While he'd still make a fortune from this deal, by his industry standards, it was generously discounted. I swept my eyes across the caged lizard folk. Their cold, hate-filled gazes stared back at me. Some of them bared their teeth, throats emitting guttural growls of defiance. But as soon as one of my guards unsheathed his blade, their growls instantly subsided. A fiery, spirited bunch, I like that. With the slave collars on them, I wasn't worried about disobedience. And if I offered them the chance to survive and thrive, I knew this fierce group would fight under my banner. At that moment, my gaze was drawn to a curled-up figure in the corner. It was a female lizard folk, but her scales were not the usual grayish-black. They were an unusual pure white, emitting an almost otherworldly aura of beauty even in the dimly lit confines of the wagon. Her kin kept their distance from her, as if she were some sort of plague. I blinked and focused on her appearance. Reina. Combat prowess, 108. Strategy, 40. Rating S. Special abilities, White Dragon Bloodline, Dragon Scale Hardening, Dragon's Blessing. Holy SH. A White Dragon Bloodline. S-tier rating? I almost thought I was seeing things. Dragons, the pinnacle of life on this continent. Powerful, arrogant, and insatiable. So every now and then, some halfling child bearing their bloodline unexpectedly emerges. But to think I'd stumble upon a dragonborn among a group of lizard folk today. Suppressing the joy surging within me, I made my decision on the spot. Buy them all. I turned to the pudgy trader. Should I send someone to my castle to bring the money, or will you wait for me to deliver it later? The fat man's round face bloomed into a smile. It practically looked like a flower. Waving his hands eagerly, he said, "How could I not trust Viscount Sama's honor? Whenever it's convenient, just send word." He swiftly ordered his men to load up the lizard folk. Entire wagons full of them, and had everything sent off to my manor in grand procession. Reyna was an abandoned orphan. Her white scales, to her tribe, were a symbol of bad luck. The one and only protector she'd ever had, her grandmother, a formidable lizard folk mage, vanished mysteriously 3 years ago. From then on, her life became a living hell. Isolation, bullying, physical abuse. So when the human army raised her home, Reyna didn't feel sadness. Instead, she felt a sense of release. Watching those who had tormented her suffer the same fate brought her a twisted sense of balance. When 2 maids bathed her, her eyes remained lifeless and distant. But once she was cleaned up, her appearance even stunned Uluru. A face as delicate as porcelain, skin soft and flawless, cascades of light red hair tumbling down her back, ruby-like eyes, and 2 small bumps on her forehead showing the beginnings of horns. And when dressed in a maid's uniform, the way her white-stockinged legs curved gave off an adorable charm that was impossible to ignore. "She's so pretty," stammered Uluru, struggling for words after seemingly holding her breath. When she brought Reyna to stand in front of me, she even cast worried glances at my reaction, afraid this new little enchantress might steal my attention. I simply nodded calmly. Fall for every pretty face I see. What a joke. My interest has never been in appearances. It's always about their value. I settled the lizard folk on a patch of wasteland just outside my manor, gave them wood, and told them to build their own homes. I even promised silver coins and food to those who joined my army. Desperate and with nowhere else to go, they agreed without hesitation. But this move caused an uproar across my territory. Norlanceans were naturally xenophobic, looking down on all demi-humans. When I granted former slaves land and dignity, they saw it as an act of utter betrayal. Complaints and protests resounded everywhere. This world's racial discrimination is worse than I'd imagined. To calm the unrest, I had to publicly declare that the lizard folk were merely tools for training, and that they wouldn't settle permanently in New Luika. Only then did the townsfolk quiet down. They trusted me because every promise I'd made before had been kept. Sometimes, building a solid reputation really comes in handy. Once the dust settled, I summoned Reyna to my study. "Master, here's your tea." She stood beside me with the tray, obedient as ever, her eyes still distant as if lost in thought. "Reyna," I called her name. "You've got some strength, don't you?" She nodded. "I do." She'd already broken a few plates when she first arrived because she couldn't control her strength. I stood. "Come on, let's take a walk to the training ground." At the training ground, Akshin spotted me and immediately rushed over, grinning like a lapdog. His gaze flitted to Reyna standing behind me. When he realized it wasn't Whitey, a flash of disappointment crossed his face. "Master, what brings you here?" Looking at his combat prowess of 79 displayed in my mind, a thought sparked. "Akshin, you've been keeping up with your training, right? I'm always ready to fight for you on the battlefield." He thumped his chest proudly. "Good." I pointed at Reyna standing beside me. "Well, now's the time to prove it. Spar with my maid. Beat her, and I'll make you a knight on the spot." "A knight?" Akshin's eyes lit up, his excitement bursting forth. He sized up Reyna. She looked so small and frail, probably incapable of lifting a weapon, let alone fighting. This was basically free merit. "You're not going to take it back, are you?" He licked his lips hungrily. Excitedly, he shouted, "I'm about to become the second knight of the Lewis Carlet territory." The surrounding guards began cheering and teasing as they chimed in. "Captain Action, you're really reverting to your younger self. Picking a fight with a maid. Haha, give her both hands free. Winning this won't bring you any honor otherwise." I patted Reyna on the shoulder with a smirk. "What do you say? Interested? If you win, you can do whatever you want from now on." A spark of excitement flashed through Reyna's crimson eyes. Deep down, the white dragon's blood in her veins yearned for power. "Master, do you want me to win?" "Of course." The two stepped into the training ground center. Akshin dropped his playful grin and got into a stance. "Ready, lovely maid? Here I come." Before his words had fully landed, he charged at Rina, aiming to end the match with a single hand chop. But Rina stood frozen in place, seemingly paralyzed by fear. A confident smirk appeared on Akshin's lips. He thought he had this in the bag. However, the moment he reached out to finish her off, a pale, slender hand shot out like lightning, firmly grabbing his arm. And in the next second, the world spun upside down. Bang! Dust erupted as Akshin was slammed onto the ground with a heavy thud. A clean and decisive over-the-shoulder throw. The crowd fell into dead silence. Not a whisper. It was as if the whole training ground had frozen in time. Face down on the ground, Akshin's mind went blank. He couldn't comprehend how he got taken down in a single move by someone who looked so fragile and delicate. Could it be all lizard folk were monsters like this? While he was busy questioning his life choices, my calm voice broke the silence. "Akshin, looks like you won't be getting that knighthood. And don't say I never gave you a chance. Perform well on the battlefield, and maybe I'll reconsider." "Yes, my lord." Akshin shot up, flawlessly pulling off a kip-up. He didn't dare quibble, and instead bowed deeply to both Rina and me. A loss was a loss. The Norans worshipped strength and respect the strong. By now, the scorn he once had when looking at Rina had been replaced with pure reverence. Rina, on the other hand, seemed a bit carried away by all of this excitement. Her pale arms, marked with faint scales, flexed slightly as thin streams of steam escaped. Embarrassed, she glanced at me cautiously before darting behind me to hide. Interesting. From that day forward, Rina became a regular at the training grounds. That woman, Whitey, would often sit back amused, watching as more and more talented individuals popped out of nowhere under my leadership. Her gaze grew stranger by the day. She's probably labeled me as one of those chosen by fate types. After all, how else would a broke-down baron like me not just survive, but also claw out hidden gems left and right from among the common crowd? What else could this be other than the luck of divine providence? Of course, she never suspected me to be a transmigrator from another world. That was because I had kept my secret buried deep. Ever since her arrival, I hadn't slipped even a single modern-day term. Over time, Whitey's favorability toward me had reached 30, not high, but sufficient. It was a solid threshold where friendship begins. And for me, that's all I needed, a friend I could count on to pull me out of a tight corner. With the problem of people solved, the next challenge was money. Without money, everything else is just empty talk. Unfortunately, I wasn't some genius transmigrator who landed here with a bag full of black tech skills. Refining salt? Nope. Inventing water wheels? Forget it. Distilling alcohol? In a world of alchemy, booze has already been experimented to death. However, one area stood out: a severe lack of innovation in desserts. Butter existed, but cream hadn't made an appearance yet. If I could figure out cream-based bread, I could already picture the gold coins rolling in. Time to make it happen. Calling Yahello to the kitchen, I threw myself into action, whipping furiously until my arms nearly gave out. But after all that effort, the cursed cream stubbornly pulled together into its desired consistency. "Here, taste this." Dipping a finger into the bowl, I offered it to Yahello. Her cheeks flushed, but she cautiously leaned in, her tongue flicking out to try it. And in a second, her eyes lit up as if struck by lightning. "Young master, is this cream? It's amazing." I chuckled. This was the response I'd been waiting for. "Listen closely, Yahello," I said very seriously. "This recipe is a secret. Only you, Ankiona, and a select few utterly loyal maids in the castle will know about it. If anyone dares leak it, you know the consequences." She nodded firmly. The next step? A grand performance. The news that I, Linvy Lewis Carlett, Viscount, was hosting my 17th birthday banquet spread across Norans like wildfire. Invitations were sent to all the noble families surrounding my territory, prominent merchant guilds, and even a few counts and marquises. Except for that old bastard Fadra. When Count Pharos received his invitation, he mistakenly thought my move had backing from the Duke Elia herself. Eager not to fall behind, he hastily prepared a lavish gift in response. Little did he know, the actual orchestrator behind all of this was me. All right, let's translate this into English with a tone and style that fits the American storytelling vibe. The day of the banquet, my castle gates were bustling with activity. The road leading up to it was packed with carriages, a never-ending stream of guests arriving. The butler was practically running himself ragged, but the creases on his face were pulled into a cheerful, blooming smile. Just the gifts alone were enough to fill up half a warehouse. Even those leftist marquises, who seemed to have the world at their feet these days, showed up. You should have seen the look of shock on my butler's face. The way he looked at me, you'd think he was staring at the future Duke himself. And that's when it happened. An unexpected guest walked in. Baron Fedra. He didn't have an invitation, but that didn't stop him. He strolled up with a shameless grin, apologizing profusely to my butler. When Uluru came to inform me, her eyes were filled with disdain. She hadn't forgotten that time when our old stableman Aashio got turned away at the Baron's door like an unwanted stray. "Let him in," I said calmly. Uluru looked puzzled, but did as I instructed. She returned to Fedra with a carefully crafted response. "Our lord deeply regrets the oversight of not sending you an invitation. He extends his sincerest apologies and promises to visit you personally to make amends after the banquet." She delivered the message flawlessly, leaving Fedra visibly flustered. But what could he do? In front of so many nobles, I had offered him an olive branch. He had no choice but to play along. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not some magnanimous saint. But today I had to be. About a third of Nolan's nobles had gathered here tonight. Publicly humiliating him would only give me a reputation for being petty and overbearing. Reputation matters above all. It's the currency of business. When the guests had all arrived, I ascended the staircase, taking in the sight of the finely dressed crowd before me. First of all, I want to thank you all for gracing us with your presence. A few routine pleasantries later, the banquet was officially underway. Roast venison? Merely an appetizer. The true surprise lay ahead. When trays of bread topped with dollops of snowy white foam were brought out, the room buzzed with curiosity. "What is this?" asked Vis, president of the Eastern Trade Guild, breaking the silence. I raised my glass and proclaimed, "Let me introduce you to a specialty of the Luiska territories, Luiska cream." Vis was the first to give it a try, always the showman. He tore off a piece of bread, scooped up some cream, and took a bite. The moment it hit his tongue, his eyes lit up in pure delight. With the icebreaker out of the way, the other nobles followed suit. Soon enough, the room was filled with exclamations of praise. "Viscount Linvi, this creation of yours is simply divine." One of the leftist marquises lauded me. Meanwhile, the merchants in Vis group said little, but their eyes glittered with that distinct hunger, the unmistakable glint of opportunity. The bait had been taken. Once the party ended and the non-essentials had left, I made sure every noble walked away with a jar of cream as a parting gift. Even Fedra didn't leave empty-handed. Sure, he only got one jar, but I'm sure he was grateful I didn't throw him out in front of everyone. Now it was time to talk business. Predictably, Vis the old fox stayed behind. He sidled up to me with a grin so wide it practically reached his ears. "Viscount Linvi, this cream of yours, what a treasure. Do you like it?" I replied with a smile that barely reached my eyes. "If you'd like, I could ask Uluru to bring you a few more jars." He laughed awkwardly, deciding now was the time to switch strategies. "Viscount, you're not getting any younger. Don't you think it's time to settle down? If you'd align yourself with Duke Simon, I could introduce you to a count's daughter. What do you think?" I cut him off mid-sentence. "Come now, President Vis. We both serve His Majesty. Let's not play games here." Undeterred, he chuckled and finally got to the point. "Very well then, let's talk about the cream. I want to buy the recipe. How does 10,000 gold sound?" 10,000? I nearly laughed out loud in his face. Was he trying to buy a feast with pocket change? Ignoring him, I turned to Uluru. "Uluru, would you kindly bring President Vis 2 more jars of cream?" The man froze, startled. "Viscount, what's this about?" I grabbed his hand enthusiastically, like we were the best of friends. "President Vis, sentiment is worth more than gold between us. What's a recipe compared to our friendship? Why, if you want it, I'll gift it to you." "Let's not kid around," he muttered awkwardly, trying to pull his hand back. I released him, spreading my hands as if to say, "You started this. You were joking first, weren't you?" Vis inhaled deeply, realizing he wasn't dealing with an easy mark. And with the other merchants in the room watching hungrily, he had no choice but to up the ante. "All right, name your price." Slowly, I raised one finger. 10,000. His brows furrowed as he mentally calculated his margins. I shook my head. 1 million. Nolan's gold. Are you out of your mind? His eyes nearly popped out of his head. 1 million. That's only worth it if this thing sells all the way in Yard and Rema. Oh, it will. I said, giving him a firm pat on the shoulder. Here's the deal. I'm not selling the recipe. I'll let you use it for free, but I take 60% of the profits. You can have 40. No way. He countered instantly. 50-50. You're not even providing the raw materials. End of snippet. The negotiation is clearly going to get more intense. Let me know if you'd like me to continue. Distributed the remaining piece of cake on her plate evenly, a playful smirk on her lips. Really, teacher? Saluka's cheeks turned crimson, glancing away awkwardly. It's not that impressive. He's just resourceful, I suppose. Resourceful? Alelia chuckled softly, leaning back in her ornate chair. Child, resourcefulness is one thing. But building an empire out of confectionaries? That's strategy. You sure this young Viscount of yours doesn't have a dragon's ferocity tucked away within that cunning mind of his? Saluka paused, biting her lower lip as her fingers absent-mindedly fiddled with a corner of her sleeve. Truthfully, she had started to notice the subtle intensity in his actions. Every move calculated, every word deliberate. Though he carried himself with a noble's charm, there was an unshakable aura of ambition that surpassed the naivete she once thought he held. Meanwhile, back at the manor, in his private study, I leaned over the desk, running my finger across the large map laying flat beneath me. Each district, every route, I was committing it to memory. My thoughts wove between the soldiers I'd ordered, the funds restocked, and the alliances quietly strengthening in the shadows. One step at a time, I was crafting something bigger than anyone could anticipate. Master, a familiar soft voice drifted through the doorway. I didn't even need to look up to know it was Yahello, her presence gentle as ever. You should get some rest, she urged, the concern not hidden in her tone. But I chuckled softly, leaning back in my chair and looking her way. Rest? I grinned. There's no time for rest when the board is set, and it's my turn to move. She pouted slightly, her brows furrowing just a bit. You're pushing yourself too hard. I saw her genuine worry. She wasn't just a servant. She was also family. I pushed the map aside, standing up, and with a subtle tilt of my head, gestured for her to come closer. As she reluctantly approached, I spoke with a lighter tone, my usual sharpness tempered. Don't worry so much, Yahello. Everything I plan, everything I do, it's for us. For you, for the ones who matter. She blinked up at me, her expression caught between exasperation and some wordless emotion I couldn't entirely place. Now, I pointed toward the corner of the room, where a polished box sat, the lid slightly ajar to reveal glimpses of an ornate gift wrapped with silken ribbons. It's late, but shouldn't the birthday girl open her real present? Her jaw dropped, eyes widening with surprise. Clearly, she hadn't anticipated this. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, as if harboring a burst of energy, she beamed, an honest, radiant smile that made the otherwise dreary room feel a little brighter. You didn't have to. Of course I did, I said simply, smirking again. What kind of noble would I be if I forgot? Now go on, open it before I decide to keep it for myself. Elsewhere, the quiet halls of the kingdom's palatial grounds were soon to become abuzz with whispers. Though few spoke openly, one name was starting to trail off the lips of advisors, merchants, even nobles. A rising young viscount with bold ambition and unrelenting resourcefulness. Not everyone saw this as an opportunity. You've heard the news, haven't you? The man grumbled at the corner of a shadowed chamber. His silvered cane tapped impatiently against the marble floor, echoing within the private meeting held between lords. Nearby, a hooded figure remained silent but observant as others around the table muttered. 20,000? Someone exclaimed incredulously. How does a man of merely lower noble rank? Not just a man, another interrupted. They say his business instincts are sharper than a blade. But sharper blades often lead to accidents. Stuffing her mouth full of creamy pudding, she looked just like a little girl who never grew up. Saluka turned red, stammering as if she couldn't string a proper sentence together. Elias suddenly grew serious. Saluka, remember this. You're a talented mage. Don't let yourself veer off the right path because of a man. Saluka looked utterly confused. Master, how could I go astray? I haven't touched any forbidden magic at all. Elias sighed. What she didn't say aloud was that humans lived far too short a life. The thought of her naive pupil possibly resorting to forbidden magic to resurrect her after her death terrified her. She had already dealt with a rogue student once before and didn't want to go through that pain again. What a pity she didn't know the truth. I am not so easy to kill. Meanwhile, Back at my castle. Reina, you grew horns? I stared, intrigued, at the crystalline, translucent white horns that now adorned Reina's head. Now this really gave her that storied dragon maiden vibe. Her voice was barely more than a whisper, as if she were afraid I'd find her growing stranger as a so-called lizard girl. Mind if I touch them? Warm and smooth to the touch, the horns gave off a faint, odd heat. I found myself mesmerized, running my fingers over them until Reina's dragon scales began to steam and her face turned as red as an apple. Only then did I reluctantly pull my hand back. A glance at her stats panel. Reina, Might, 148. Strategy, 60. Loyalty, 100. Special abilities, White Dragon Bloodline, Dragon Scale Hardening, Dragon Spirit's Blessing, Frost Dragon Legacy. Evaluation, S. What the hell? Her stats skyrocketed like she'd been strapped to a rocket. And now she had a new ability, Frost Dragon Legacy. That whitey woman really did come in clutch. Reina, I said, gripping her hand and locking eyes with her. Will you become my knight? To represent the Luiska family and reclaim the glory that's rightfully ours. 1 month from now, the Gladiators tournament would take place. Back then, I'd sold off the family's only gladiator emblem just to keep the estate afloat. Now, I was going to win it back with my own hands. Reina, we'll do it, she answered without hesitation. In a quiet room elsewhere, Whitey stared at the cream before her, her gaze complex. The taste was far too familiar. So familiar that it brought her back hundreds of years ago, to a gentle, breezy afternoon when she was just a regular university student named by D. Suddenly, she snapped her head up. An absurd, but exhilarating thought raced through her mind. Linwei, could he also be someone who had crossed over? She wanted to ask. She didn't dare to, afraid to be disappointed, afraid it was nothing but a coincidence. What she didn't know was that, at that very moment, I was pondering my own question. This succubus named Whitey, despite half of her curse having already been lifted, her loyalty stat was still marked as a question mark. It was about time I had a proper chat with her. Preparations done, I headed for the royal capital. The gladiator emblem of the eagle, the Norrens kingdom's highest individual honor. Whoever won, it would have the king personally award their victory. I'd once sold an emblem like that. Now, I was going to have Reina win it back for me. On the carriage ride, I noticed Reina fidgeting beside me, her usual confidence overshadowed by nerves at the thought of the crowd. Reina, safety first, I said, giving her hand a reassuring pat. Winning or losing doesn't matter. I said it as if I genuinely cared. Not because I'm some saint, but because my grandfather always said this. Emotions are a weapon far deadlier than violence. I truly sympathized with someone like Yahello. But for others, they were merely tools in the grand game of survival. And so what? Without me, Reina might still be rotting in the basement of some noble's mansion, being tormented endlessly. With me, she had her first shot at glory. We all got what we wanted. Master, I won't let you down. Determination gleamed in her eyes. Perfect. That's the kind of attitude I needed. The royal city's gladiator arena was packed to the brim, comparable to a lively festival crowd. Reina clung anxiously to the hem of my coat, so I simply took her hand instead. Her hand was icy at first, but quickly warmed under my touch. The moment we entered, that rotund merchant, barreled toward me like I was his long-lost father and gave me an almost suffocating bear hug. Viscount Linwei, I've missed you so much. Same here, President Vis, I replied with equal enthusiasm. His dramatic affection left the surrounding nobles gobsmacked. If they didn't know better, they'd assumed the two of us were betrothing our children to one another. Truth was, we were tied together like 2 peas in a pod. The cream enterprise had lined both our coffers nicely. Naturally, he had every reason to lay on the charm. The onlookers' gazes were a blend of scrutiny, curiosity, and envy. Is that Linwei? The guy who captured a Remo royal alive? And he's the mastermind behind that cream everyone's crazy about? What a genius. Wow, your taste really is something. Bringing a lizard maid to an event like this? I couldn't care less about the snide comments around me. My gaze locked onto one figure in the Duke's seating area, Saluka. She was draped in a pristine white mage's robe, and when our eyes met, she offered me a shy smile. That tender moment, however, didn't go unnoticed by someone else. Third Prince, Michel. That guy narrowed his eyes like a venomous snake. I knew then, trouble was brewing. I quickly averted my gaze. It wasn't the right time yet. Wait until I get that count's title. Wait until my armies are strong enough. After that, anyone who dares utter even one word of nonsense can go to hell. At the registration booth, I told Reina to handle it on her own. She's shy around strangers, but she needs to work through that. Sure enough, the moment she stepped up, someone started giving her a hard time. "Miss Maid, this isn't a place for you." The clerk sneered with disdain. "I'm here to register," she replied calmly. "What? Register?" Before she could say much more, a big, burly guy swaggered over, laughing mockingly. "Little maid, just go back to warming your master's bed, okay? The arena's no place for women." "Are you kidding me?" I heard it loud and clear from a distance and was about to step in when someone else beat me to it. Count Faroth, one of Duke Simon's people. "Yager, did you just insult a noble?" Faratha's voice was colder than ice. That swordsman, Yager, froze on the spot. He hadn't expected a noble to stand up for a mere maid. "Count Faroth, I was merely trying to remind." "Silence. You're just Simon's lapdog." Faroth cut him off mercilessly. "Say one more word, and I'll have you thrown in the moat tonight." Yager's face turned a shade of green, but he didn't dare make a sound after that. Faroth, what a sly fox. Clearly, he's already caught wind of the fact that I've got Elia backing me. Guess he's here to cozy up before the fire's even lit. Vis next to me let out a nervous breath. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. Sending a maid to compete in the arena, no wonder it seemed utterly ludicrous to them. They're about to find out just how crazy my maid really is. The matches began. It was brutal and blood-soaked. One after another, so-called strongmen walked onto the stage, and one after another, they were dragged off as lifeless corpses. Yager, that swordsman, was up first. Within moments, he sliced off the head of another adventurer. As his opponent's blood pooled around him, he glanced over in my direction with a smug expression. I didn't react, except to glance at his stats panel. Yager, martial skill, 102. Rating, A. A class. Decent. But compared to my S-class Reina, he's nothing but a joke. All around, noble after noble began praising Duke Simon's camp, marveling over the fearsome warrior among his ranks. You could practically see the smugness dripping off the Duke's face. And then, it was Reina's turn. She stepped into the blood-stained arena wearing her maid uniform, armed only with a standard longsword and a small iron shield. Alone, she stood in the center of that pit of death. The crowd erupted with laughter and jeers. "What's going on? Is that a maid? Has the Luca family run out of men?" "Huh, she's just here to die, isn't she?" I smirked. "Laugh all you want. Go ahead. In a moment, not a single one of you will find it funny."